So today we are taking up the final chapter in the series of chapters on integral education, the psychic education and spiritual education. And you will see it is written in a very different way compared to the other three chapters on also science of living. So here let's go slowly. Let's dwell on the words. And as the first paragraph is pretty long, I think it might be good to even stop in between uh, and understand what she's saying. Because it is, yeah, if we can read it from a slightly inward voice, that will be better. So, who would like to start reading? Okay, Sagarika, go ahead, unmute yourself.
So far, we have dealt only with the education that can be given to all children born upon earth, and which is concerned with purely human faculties. But one needs not inevitably stop there. Every human being carries hidden within him the possibility of a greater consciousness which goes beyond the bounds of his present life and enables him to share in a higher and a vaster life. Indeed, in all exceptional beings, it is always this consciousness that governs their lives and organizes both the circumstances of their existence and their individual reaction to these circumstances. What the human mental consciousness does not know and cannot do, this consciousness knows and does. It
Buzz,
is like a
buzz, stop here. Stop here. Stop here. So, so the first thing she's talking about, this is what she's explaining, the psychic presence within oneself. Possibility of a greater consciousness which goes beyond the bounds of his present life. So the
But the,
mind, the vital, and the physical
it's the possibility. She's not saying it is there. She's saying it is a
is a
possibility.
possibility for the
That's not.
psychic. The psychic spark is there in everybody, but whether it grows to which what extent it grows and becomes conscious, I mean psychic is conscious, but the person becomes conscious of it, and it acquires an individuality of its own, where at which point it is, instead of being called psychic spark, it becomes a psychic being. So that is a differentiation I don't really want to go into right now. Shri Aurobindo has explained the difference. But for our purposes, it is just enough to know that all of us have it, this possibility, whether we materialize or not.
A possibility of what?
Okay, possibility of a greater consciousness which goes beyond the bounds of the present life. So it is a consciousness which is not bounded by, if I am Anuradha in this life, it is not limited to Anuradha. It is connected to all my previous births and my future births.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to understand is this a possibility that you may have it, or is it that you have it but you don't know how to tap into it?
One has it, but one doesn't know how to tap into it or strengthen it or actualize it. If you become conscious of the psychic being and if you're living in the psychic, then it is possible to also recall your previous births, for example. Okay. So, but uh, we are not, and it doesn't mean that people who recall previous births are connected to the psychic. It doesn't mean that also. So, what I'm trying to point out is that the physical, we all know, we see it, it dies with the, we call that death when the physical perishes. We call that death. And the mind and vital also, to our view, they die. They take birth for a particular purpose for, and when that thing is done, they go back to their planes. But the psychic is the only thing which continues from life to life. So that's why it goes beyond the bounds of the present life and enables him to share in a higher and vaster life, a life which is not limited to this body, this mind, this vital, and to this framework, which is me. So that's the first entry point, which can connect you to a spiritual life. Indeed, in all exceptional beings, it is always this consciousness, in exceptional beings, this consciousness that governs their lives. And what it does, what is its action? It organizes both the circumstances of their existence and their individual reaction to these circumstances. Now, please understand, this does not mean, oh, everything will be, the person will be rich, they will be living in comfort, they will never have pain, they will not never suffer, no sorrow. It doesn't mean that. Because that's the human way of thinking. The moment we say, oh, the soul or the divine is going to guide you, or the soul is going to guide your life, we think of everything only positive will happen. But the psychic depends on what is the purpose of its birth, and accordingly things will happen. If sorrow is important for it, grief is important, pain is important for its growth, what it has to experience in this life, what it has come to acquire mastery over, then that will also happen. But not only the circumstances, but also their response to the circumstances. So the psychic response is different from our ordinary response. No matter what happens, whether it is the most joyful thing or it is the most sorrowful thing, the response is different. So,
Mm,
yes,
right.
please. Yeah. Yeah, Sagar.
Uh, how do we know that our psychic being is growing and it's giving the mother is consciously, my psychic conscious is growing? How do we
But
know?
if we are asking this question, we don't know. When you know, this question will disappear. There
So
is
how do we,
no mental way of knowing it. See, it is a psychic consciousness. It is a consciousness which is beyond the mind. So there is no mental way of knowing it.
can we realize it?
Realize what?
Um, then what is psychic then? Should we, matlab,
That is what the mother is explaining in this chapter.
okay.
It is a conscious. Now, you might have touches of it. You might sometimes suddenly, when you are in nature or you listen to a piece of beautiful music, or you're running, or you're doing anything, suddenly you might have this kind of a magical experience, which you cannot ascribe to imagination or mind or a vision or anything. It is just a different experience that might be a psychic touch. I mean, everybody moment to moment experiences. But here, remember, this is psychic education. So, just like if we engage in mental education, we have to know what is the mind. If we don't know what the mind is, how will we educate it? Same way vital, same way physical. In fact, Sri Aurobindo's chapter on mental education begins with describing what the mind is and what are the levels of the mind. Because he says that education takes up mind but does not explain what the mind is. And unless you know what material you are working with, how will you work with it? So, what I'm saying is that it is not that Mother has revealed everything about the psychic in this chapter. Whatever is necessary for this purpose, she has talked about it. And it is something which there are innumerable conversations of the Mother, Sri Aurobindo's letters, etc., etc., on this topic if one really wants to engage with it. So, what the human being, human mental consciousness does not know and cannot do, this consciousness knows and does. Did we read
Okay.
further or we read only till here? Does. Yeah, we read.
Yes. Mm.
Yes. Sagarika, you want to continue?
Yes. It is like a light that shines at the center of the being, radiating through the thick covering of the external consciousness. Some have a vague intimation of its presence. A good many children are under its influence, which shows itself very distinctly at times in their spontaneous actions and even in their words. Unfortunately, since parents most often do not know what it is and do not understand what is happening in their child, their reaction to those phenomena is not a good one, and all their education consists in making the child as unconscious as possible in this domain and concentrating all this attention on external things, thus accustoming him to think that they are the only ones that matter.
Okay, stop here. I mean, here the idea is simple, but I thought let's just assimilate as we go. So, the first thing in continuation of describing the psychic she's talking about is like a light that shines at the center of the being. In the Upanishads, it is described as the size of the thumb. The soul, the Atman, is the size of the thumb. And it's like a light radiating through the thick coverings of the external consciousness. But of course, we are not aware of it. That's why the importance of meditation, that if you meditate on the psychic center, and even if you start with visualizing the light, it can lead you there, or visualizing the divine at the heart center. Everybody has their own methods, but this, because the mind and the external conscious is so active, a great effort is needed to quieten that and then to go within. So, this is the supreme importance of meditation. Some have a vague, now in children, she's saying, so adults have, some have a vague intimation. But as regards the children, she's saying that children, quite a few of them, most of them in fact, are under its influence. And that is the reason that we, all of us, feel attracted to children, because it is the psychic presence which is in the front in a child, in their eyes, in their gestures, in the glow of their skin, in everything. And that is what attracts. That's why we are attracted to things which kind of have the psychic element, flowers, for example. Unfortunately, so this is clear that obviously when the adults, the parents don't know about it, and they don't understand, if a child wants to sit and be quiet, they want the child to be active. They think maybe the child is falling ill, we have to make the child run or be engaged in something. Like the mother has spoken about her own childhood. She used to have a special chair, a kind of a rocking chair, I think, which was in her house. And since she was 4 years old, she used to enjoy sitting there, and she used to call it, I mean, she later she said it was actually she was organizing her life. And she used to see all these things. And that was for her the supreme pastime. And her parents could not understand, who's this girl who doesn't want to go for picnics, to the circus, to this thing. Instead, she would like to do this. So the result is that you make the child as unconscious as possible. Plus, because you concentrate all the attention on external things, so what happens to all of us is we become accustomed to thinking that external life is what matters. External life is what is real. External life is what we have to perfect. And we kind of close our eyes and become gradually more and more insensitive to what is within, and especially the psychic presence. Anything to discuss, or shall we go on? Okay. Pooja, will you take this up? It is true.
It is true that this concentration on external things is very useful.
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
It is true that this concentration on external things is very useful, provided that it is done in the proper way. The three lines of education, physical, vital, and mental, deal with that and could be defined as the means of building up the personality, raising the individual out of the amorphous subconscious mass, and making him a well defined, self conscious entity. Pardon? Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Not here.
Okay.
Everybody looks frozen.
I think
No, because you are freezing.
Yes, only.
Today the connection is bad. Today, even on my phone, I am not able to call anybody.
so. I think maybe if you switch off your video, that's why I
Okay,
switched
I'll do
mine off
that.
because I think my video is also unstable.
Yeah, I'll do
Maybe
that.
only the person who's reading can or speaking can put their video on.
Okay. Pooja, can you start again, please?
Sure. It is true that this concentration on external things is very useful, provided that it is done in the proper way. The three lines of education, physical, vital, and mental, deal with that and could be defined as the means of building up the personality, raising the individual out of the amorphous subconscious mass and making him a well defined self conscious entity. With psychic education, we come to the problem of the true motive of existence, the purpose of life on earth, the discovery to which this life must lead, and the result of that discovery, the consecration of the individual to this eternal principle.
Okay, just pause there. So the first part is pretty simple. And mother is saying what she described in physical, vital, and mental education. This could be the means of building up the personality. Those of you who have read A.S. Dalal's that inner and outer attitude chart in Looking from Within compilation, there he explains it as that the outer being is the personality, and personality comes from the word personality comes from the word persona from Latin, and persona, the meaning of persona is mask. So it is like it is not our true person, and he distinguishes it from the true person, P capital, saying that is the inner being. So that is the inner mental, inner vital, inner physical, and the psychic. So here, mother is also using this word, although I must say this is a translation. Mother didn't write it in English, she wrote in French. So, but uh, that is how it is translated here. So, mental, physical, vital deal with the means of building up the personality. So, they are important for that. But if one wants to contact the inner being, then we have to go beyond it. Because it is also important to become a self conscious entity. That is important. Now, the next thing she talks about is the true motive of existence. So, once the personality is made, is developed, but what is this personality for? What is the purpose? What is the purpose of having a developed mind, or a developed, refined vital, or a healthy body? So, in this framework, it is not just to achieve success, to live a reasonably comfortable life, and then to die. It is for the purpose the psychic has taken, come into the manifestation and taken on the body, mind, and vital. So that's what she says, that we come to the true motive of existence, the purpose of life on earth, the discovery to which this life must lead, and the result of that discovery, the consecration of the individual to his eternal principle. So everybody can have a different eternal principle. The consecration is to the psychic. Now, whatever mission the psychic has come for, to become aware of that and to consecrate oneself to that. And obviously, like in the Prophet Khalil Gibran says, that if you have to give a gift to your beloved, you have to make it perfect. So, mental, vital, physical education is the process of making that gift perfect. But then the offering comes through the psychic. An offering to what? To the eternal principle. Whatever my swadharma is, whatever the aim of my life is, to put my mind, my physical, my vital at the service of that purpose. That is what is being said here. Yes, Pooja, please continue.
Normally, this discovery is associated with a mystic feeling, a religious life, because it is mainly the religions that have concerned themselves with this aspect of life. But it need not necessarily be so. The mystic notion of God may be replaced by the more philosophical notion of truth, and still the discovery will remain essentially the same. But the road leading to it may be taken even by the most transient, transigent positivist. For mental notions and ideas have only a very secondary importance in preparing one for the psychic life. The important thing is to live an experience that carries with it its own reality and force apart from any theory that may precede or accompany or follow it. For most often, theories are no more than explanations that one gives to oneself in order to have more or less the illusion of knowledge.
Okay, you can stop here. So this all of us know, agar, if anybody says, oh, I am in search of my soul, I want to spend time seeking my soul, people generally, this notion of, now it is changing in our present times gradually. This is written many years back, many decades back, and it is still changing very slowly. Uh, but if a person really wants to do this, then they say, Acha, you wait till your old life. Abhi to you still have so many years left of productive work. Why do you want to go in this direction? When you retire, then do it. Normally, people talk about, that the spirituality has to come later, later in life. Maybe it's connected to that whole four ashramas and all which we have had. So she's saying, because religions have concerned themselves, discovery of the soul. Generally, religions have taken up this topic. Education obviously has not. It used to in Vedic times, but since the split happened between uh, materialism and spiritualism, it has not been part of education. And that's why she says it need not be so. And then she goes on to say something interesting. She says one doesn't have to call it God or divine or soul. One can also pursue truth, like scientists do, or a true philosopher would do. And still the discovery will remain essentially the same. But obviously, that pursuit cannot be only mental. And that's why I think I've said this earlier also. If you look at the most eminent scientists who have really gone deep into science in a true scientific spirit, not science as utilitarian tool, but really a seeking for truth, they have all somehow or the other come to this notion of consciousness or a reality beyond what the mind can understand, etc. So she says you can call it anything, but the discovery will remain the same. And that's why the road leading to it may be taken even by a person who believes only in proof, in material uh, things, who's not a mystic at all, who does not believe in mysticism. There is also an anecdote of the mother, I think maybe I shared earlier, when uh, Russian gymnasts had to be invited to the ashram. Mother wanted to invite them, or something like that, or a delegation had to go to Russia, something to do with Russia. And the people going asked the mother, but in Russia they don't believe in the divine. And if they ask us, what do we believe in?
Your voice is gone, Anuradha.
No, there was a call which was coming.
Oh, okay.
I had put it on silent, but the phone connects. So, so that we cannot talk about the divine and the purpose of the ashram and all that kind of a thing. She says, doesn't matter. You can call it perfection, you can call it truth, you can call it by any other name. It doesn't change the experience. You don't have to use the term God, divine, all these kind of terms. So anything which is an absolute ideal, it remains the same. And now she's going on to the mental notions have a secondary importance. It's not that they're not important at all, but they have a secondary, very secondary importance in preparing one for the psychic life. So, Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, I don't know if he was even literate. He was definitely not educated in the normal sense. Oh, I'm doing gestures which you can't see. Anyway, he wasn't educated in the normal sense, but he had the most wondrous realizations and of different. He had the darshan of Christ, he had darshan of Kali, he had darshan of various godheads from various religions. So uh, the mind was not predominant. So it is not necessary that a person has to be educated or mentally developed to experience the psychic. The important thing is to live the experience. That carries with it its own reality and force, apart from any theory that may precede or accompany or follow it. And then she says in her characteristic fashion, most often theories are no more than explanations that one gives to oneself in order to have more or less the illusion of knowledge. So, real knowledge is through experience. Real knowledge is when you become that, when you experience something. But it is an illusion of knowledge. So, for me to speak about psychic quoting the mother is an illusion of knowledge. I really don't know the psychic till I experience it. So, I cannot say I'm knowledgeable about psychic. So, that is the illusion of knowledge. Yes, Pooja, you can finish the para and then we will discuss.
Man clothes the ideal or the absolute he seeks to attain with different names according to the environment in which he is born and the education he has received. The experience is essentially the same if it is sincere. It is only the words and phrases in which it is formulated that differ according to the belief and the mental education of the one who has the experience. All formulation is thus only an approximation that should be progressive and grow in precision as the experience itself becomes more and precise and coordinated. Still, to sketch a general outline of psychic education, we must give some idea, however relative it may be, of what we mean by the psychic being. One could say, for example, that the creation of an individual being is the result of the projection in time and space of one of the countless possibilities latent in the supreme origin of all manifestation, which through the medium of the one and universal consciousness takes concrete form in the law or the truth of an individual, and so by a progressive development becomes a soul or psychic being.
So the first idea is simple enough. This, all of us, I think there is nothing to explain here. This is the wideness that she's exhibiting, that the experience is the same. We might express it differently based on our culture, our education, our religion, and all those kind of things. But she says whatever we express is only an approximation, and that should be progressive, because no, naturally, as we experience it more and more, and the psychic then also grows when we try living by it, listen to it, it gains strength, it grows from life to life, and even in this life. So that our precision will also grow as the experience itself becomes more and more precise and coordinated. So it is not a static discovery, and it is not that today what I experience is the final word. I might have another experience of the psychic in a totally different way after a month or something. So that the moment I try to formulate it, one runs into problem, because that experience is kind of very difficult to put in a mental language. And this is precisely the experiment that Sri Aurobindo was doing with Savitri, that can English be a vehicle of consciousness? He could have written in any other language. Chose to write in English because he wanted to experiment that can English become a mantric language? Can it carry consciousness? Can it be a vehicle for it? That when you listen to those words, the vibration also comes into, just like with Sanskrit and the mantras. So for us, the moment we formulate anything into a mental language, the kernel of the experience kind of we are unable to catch, or the wholeness of the experience. So having said that, mother says, but still, okay, I have to put it in words for all of you. So to sketch a general outline of psychic education, we must give some idea, however relative it may be. So one has to always remember that it's a relative, it's not an absolute or a final idea of what we mean by the psychic being. And then she describes it like that. Creation of an individual being is the result of the projection in time and space. So something which is projecting is beyond time and space. That itself, the absolute, the supreme, is beyond time and space. But the supreme is projecting. What is it projecting? One of the countless possibilities. So each individual is a projection of the supreme, one of the countless possibilities which is latent, which is not manifested. It is latent in the supreme origin of all manifestation, all creation, not just earth, all creation, everything. So it is these possibilities, which are countless, are latent in the supreme origin, and each of us is one of those possibilities which has been projected into time and space upon this earth through the medium of one and universal consciousness, takes concrete form. So it is from the supreme, and through the supreme, through that absolute consciousness, it takes concrete form in the law or the truth. We can call it Swadharma, the law or the truth of an individual. So each person has their own Swadharma. And so by a progressive development, progressive. So first the principle that possibility is projected, and then through a progressive development over lives becomes the person's soul or psychic being. gradually grows into the psychic being. And then the psychic being from life to life becomes more and more powerful depending on how much we nurture it or how what we do with our life. Anything to share, reflect, discuss, anything? Or shall we carry on?
Um, I have a question really. So it sounds very as if it's not religious, but as if it's of a very um, like an auspicious. I don't know what the right word is, but it sounds very let's use auspicious as a word, as something which is being wonderfully generated and beautifully created. But this is true for everybody, right? Whatever the type of person
What's
is.
wonderfully and beautifully coming from?
Huh? Sorry?
Where are these words? I don't know what you mean by wonderfully and beautifully. Like
So,
I
for
said,
example, like, say, for example, when, the words which she's using, like all formulations, that's only an approximation that should be, no, no, for example, she said, one could say, for example, that the creation of the individual being is a result of a projection in time and space of one of the countless possibilities latent in the supreme origin of all manifestation, which through the medium of the one and universal consciousness takes concrete form and the law or the truth of an individual, and so by a progressive development becomes a solar. So it sounds like a very big thing, and it sounds like there's a very deep connection to whatever the origin of all this consciousness is, right?
yes,
So, but the point is that it's not that it's only creating good people, which is what it sounds like, or people who are have the
it sounds like
possibility of
that.
being.
It
Huh?
sounds like that to us because we associate the divine with goodness.
Is it not?
No, that is not how Sri Aurobindo interprets the divine. And that is a major departure. In fact, in all Hindu philosophy, that's the departure. Because Sri Aurobindo says, I mean, he has put it into words, but that is the essential question, I think, even pre Sri Aurobindo, that if devil has made falsehood and the world is governed by falsehood and evil is more powerful than good, which is what we see every day, then why should we worship the divine? We should worship the devil. There is no reason to worship the divine. If divine is such a pitiable being that cannot overcome the devil, why are we worshipping the divine? So he puts the responsibility fair and square on the divine for everything that happens in the world. Ultimately, it is the divine only which is responsible, nobody else. But of course, there is a whole play. I mean, it is a saying it in a very simplistic way. But in the final analysis, all creation emanates from divine. And then, of course, Mother and Sri Aurobindo both have explained very extensively without taking recourse in hell, heaven, or escape from life and moksha and nirvana, that why is it that there is this distortion? Why is there distortion? If divine is absolute truth, absolute power, absolute goodness, yes, then why is there distortion? And why does the divine allow this distortion? Why does the divine allow it to exist?
Good questions. Good questions.
So these are the questions he takes up in his Life Divine, which Pooja and I are strugglingly studying since 3 years and still struggling and struggling for maybe for another 2, 3 years. But right now we are on these chapters only, where in pages and pages Sri Aurobindo is addressing this question only. And he's first analyzing all the philosophies that have existed, how Mayavad explains it, how Vedas explain it, how, and then he's questioning them, but they do not explain this. Still, this question remains. Before he will present his own view, he was building up the suspense. So that is what is happening. Yes. So that's why I said, where does this notion of wonderfully and goodness came? And that's what I said in the beginning also, that if the life is guided by psychic, it doesn't mean there'll be no pain, no evil, nothing. Depends what purpose the psychic has come for. But the response which is guided by psychic will be completely different. which is what Sri Krishna is training Arjun for in that battlefield through the whole sermon of the Bhagavad Gita. The circumstances will remain the same. He will still have to kill. He will have to kill his family. But his response will change because then he will be acting from the psychic consciousness, finally.
This is where the principle of equanimity also, I think, comes. With what equanimity are we responding to the challenges or the situations in our life, isn't it?
Yes, so if it is a mental equanimity, there is a danger, although that can be a first step. But ultimately, all these kind of qualities, whether it's detachment, whether it's equanimity, they come from the psychic. Without that, it is not possible. Because otherwise, the mind itself can exercise a mental control and train oneself to, not to react. All that I can do. But then when I'm sleeping, when there's no mental control, then those things come up in the subconscious, in my dreams, in my various things, they come up. So the final, the burning, the fire, it's the psychic fire only which can burn these things and transform them. So, but that is not to say that one should not start, wherever one is. At least gain that much control. Try to, whatever wherever I am, I have to start. But I also know that the final victory will happen only. The psychic only can gain the final victory, not the mind, not the vital, not the physical. If the aim is this, I may not be conscious of my aim. I may never want to find out what is the swadharma of my soul, why have I come on earth. And I might be happy I made a good family, I gave a good education to my children, they are well settled, and now I'm free of all my responsibilities, and now I can die, which is what is there for most people.
No, but I think, as you say, this is a journey of lifetimes, not one life. So these are the steps on the ways, no? First, you do it mentally or you do it vitally.
Although
The-
Mother also says that if somebody asked her how long will it take to realize the psychic or something, like Sagarika, and then of course she said lifetimes and all, but she said if your aspiration is so intense, you can realize it now. The aspiration has to be intense, and that again and again it reminds me of that, which I've told you, I'm sure, of the Vivekananda and Ramakrishna story of their meeting. I have to check whether that is actually true. I think it is true, but I have to check it also. But it is a very powerful story for me. Yeah. So it is very easy to, create this division and say all evil is due to some other fellow and all good things are due to some other fellow. But that is not what, uh, actually, the whole Hindu philosophy does not believe in that. It is always, there is one origin. Everything originates from one consciousness. Okay. Kirti, you want to first, just read this much, then we will go further.
I must I must emphasize that what is stated briefly here does not claim to be a complete exposition of the reality and does not exhaust the subject. Far from it. It is only a very summary explanation for a practical purpose to serve as a basis for the education which we intend to consider now.
That is clear that we have already spoken of. You can carry on.
It is through this psychic presence that the truth of the individual being comes into contact with him and the circumstances of his life. In most cases, the presence acts, so to say, from behind the veil, unrecognized and unknown, but in some, it is perceptible and its action recognizable, and even in a very few, the presence becomes a tangible and its action fully effective. These go forward in life with an assurance and a certitude all their own. They are masters of their destiny. It is for the purpose of obtaining this mastery and becoming conscious of the psychic presence that psychic education should be practiced. But for that,
Deepti,
there
can I stop here for a minute?
yeah.
So, through the psychic presence, the truth of an individual, the essence, the true purpose of an individual, and also who the individual is uh, in essence, comes into contact with him meaning the outer consciousness, through the psychic and the circumstances of his life. So, psychic is also a mediator between the higher truths, the deeper truths, and the outer consciousness. Uh, I don't know whether I should say this. Well, I will say it because we will be going to. I will switch on my camera for a minute so that you can see me also. Yeah. So some of you are aware there are two things we are talking about. This Sahasraradal, the um, what is it called? The head, the overhead.
Crown
section.
chakra.
In English, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, the thousand petal lotus. This is the place of the spiritual being. The name is, I think, Jivatman. Jivatman. And the psychic, the center of the heart, the center of the chest, is the place of the psychic. There is a difference between the psychic and spiritual, which Mother will perhaps also explain in the chapter. The each one of us has our own Jivatma, but this consciousness does not manifest in life. It is like it stays detached away from whatever is happening to the individual. It's like a distant counselor or a distant witness of what is happening. It does not participate in human life, and yet it belongs to that person. But psychic actually manifests and is covered by the layers of the mind, the layers of the vital and the physical, everything. The psychic actually resides in us, and it participates in human life. So it is, when I said psychic is a medium or a bridge or this thing, it is also medium for the, this is the also the opening to the universal consciousness. That experience of all here is the divine. That happens not through the psychic, but through this center. Through psychic, you will experience your individual divinity. But everything here is the divine as an experience, not as an intellectual concept. Happens through this center, the Sahasrara. So this is the point which connects to the cosmic, the universal divine, and then to the transcendent upwards. So that's why I said that it is a kind of a bridge between the inner consciousness and the higher consciousness and the outer. So it is through this psychic presence that the truth of an individual being comes into contact with him and the circumstances of his life. And for most of us, the psychic acts, but from behind the veil, unrecognized, unknown. But in some, one can recognize it, like in children, for example, she said, but also there are adults who have done some kind of tapasya, some yoga, something, or for some reason, maybe people who have lived a lot with nature, who are very simple, child hearted. Its action is recognizable, and even in a very few, presence becomes tangible and its action fully effective. So this, what in general parlance we call the psychic has come forward. So the veil is taken off, and the psychic can be seen, can be felt, even by the other people. So it is the coming forward of the psychic which happens. These go forward in life with an assurance and a certitude all their own. So once that happens, then they become masters of their destiny. And it is the purpose of psychic education, which she's talking about, is to obtain this mastery, which means that she obviously thinks that it is possible for each one of us, for these little children, to be taught in a way where they grow up in a way where the psychic comes forward and they can obtain this mastery and become conscious of the psychic presence. And that is why psychic education should be practiced. We will just finish this paragraph for today. Yes, who was reading?
I was reading.
If continue, please.
But for that, there is a need of special factor, the personal will. For till now, the discovery of the psychic being and identification with it have not been among the recognized subjects of education. And although one can find in special treaties useful and practical hints on the subject, and although in exceptional cases one may have the good fortune of meeting someone who's capable of showing the way and giving the help that is needed to follow it, most often the attempt is left to one's own personal initiative. The discovery is personal matter and a great determination. A strong will and an untiring perseverance are indispensable to reach the goal. Each one must, so to say, trace out his own path through his own difficulties. The goal is known to some extent, for most of those who have reached it have described it more or less clearly. But the supreme value of the discovery lies in its spontaneity, its ingenuousness, and that escapes all ordinary mental laws. And that is why everyone wanting to take up the adventure usually first seeks out some person who has successfully undertaken it and is able to sustain him and enlighten him on his way. Yet there are some solitary travelers, and for them a few general indications may be useful.
Yeah. So earlier also, I think in the chapter on vital education, she had spoken of this great importance of will. And here again, she's talking of will. Because she says, although there is knowledge available on it, if you were to read or you were to talk to certain people who have engaged in some kind of practices, uh, there you will find the hints, etc. But generally, there is no clear path, and you have to take your own personal initiative. So, in education, it is not taken up as a systematic thing, which all of us know that it is not taken up now. Yeah. Uh, so, it is a personal matter, great determination, strong will, untiring perseverance, because one doesn't know when it will happen. So, not to give up and to keep trying to reach the goal. The path is unique to every individual because their difficulties are also unique. The why they have come upon life is also upon earth is also unique. The goal is known to some extent, the discovery of the psychic and what it is, and those because most of those who have reached it have described it more or less clear. But she says the value lies in spontaneity, ingenuousness. Not mental laws cannot really lead you there. So if somebody, that is the reason why earlier, of course, gurus were there who would look after you, who would guide you, who would tell you, now do this, now do that. Today we are living without physical gurus so much, and physical gurus generally turn out to be charlatans most of the time these days. So that is why anyone wanting to take up the adventure usually first seeks out some person. But the mother says, okay, for solitary travelers, I'm going to give some general indications, which we will take up next time, the general indication. And they are most interesting, very interesting indications she gives. For those who have read the chapter, you know, most unexpected and interesting. Hello, Nishi.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Prerna. Okay. So we'll meet next time. Yeah. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Right. So we started on this chapter, psychic education and spiritual education. And we read a little bit on what is the psychic and what is its role. It's something through which the individual comes in touch with the truth of their being, why they are on this earth. And the mother said that for each person, the way to discovery is unique, and also that uh, generally people seek some guidance from somebody, but she's giving certain guidelines, certain indications if one wants to or is has to go it solitary, then what to do. So that's where we finished last time. We stopped. So we'll start from here. Pooja, will you start, please? The starting point.
The starting point is to seek in yourself that which is independent of the body and the circumstances of life, which is not born of the mental formation that you have been given, the language you speak, the habits and customs of the environment in which you live, the country where you are born, or the age to which you belong. You must find in the depths of your being that which carries in it a sense of universality, limitless expansion, unbroken continuity. Then you decentralize, extend, and widen yourself. You begin to live in all things and in all beings. The barriers separating individuals from each other break down. You think in their thoughts, vibrate in their sensations, feel in their feelings, live in the life of all. What seemed inert suddenly becomes full of life, stones quicken, plants feel and will and suffer. Plants feel and will and suffer. Animals speak in a language more or less inarticulate, but clear and expressive. Everything is animated by a marvelous consciousness without time or limit. And this is only one aspect of the psychic realization. There are others, many others. All help you go to beyond. Just a moment, I'm so sorry. all help you all help you to go beyond the barriers of your egoism, the walls of your external personality, the importance of your reactions, and the incapacity of your will.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot packed here. This first part, this is almost like a guided meditation, something you can try for yourself. Earlier, also, she talked about a light in the center of your being. What did she say? It is like a light that shines at the center of the being. This again can be a subject of meditation. If one wants to try for oneself, one can do that. Just this phrase, it's like a light that shines at the center of the being. And here again, it is almost the steps she's giving to connect with something that is, where is it? Yeah, sorry. Something that is independent of the body and the circumstances of life. something that is independent in us of the body and the circumstances of life, not born of the mental formation that we have been given or the language we speak, habits, customs, environment. So basically, it is not attached to just this birth, one birth, and the circumstances of that birth and the personality of that birth and all those kind of things. The country you're born, age to which you belong. You must find in the depths of your being that which carries in it a sense of universality, limitless expansion, unbroken continuity. So, in a way, she is also indicating the nature of the psychic. It's like a light, it has a sense of universality, limitless expansion, unbroken continuity, and is completely free of the personality we are, or the thoughts we have, or the body we have, or the circumstances of our life. And she says, then so once you come in touch with this point, in whatever way you feel it within yourself, to decentralize, extend, and widen yourself. And then the second part describes the one of the, like she says, this is one of the aspects of realization where you begin to live in everybody, barriers break down, so the egoistic walls separating one from the other break down. You think in their thoughts. So obviously, it kind of opens up also uh, inner faculties, the inner senses and the inner faculties. Live in the life of all. What seemed inert suddenly becomes full of life, etc., etc. And she says this is only one aspect, there are many others. Basically, everything helps you to go beyond the barriers of your egoism, walls of your external personality, impotence of reactions, and incapacity of your will. Yes, Ila, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying that I thought that this was different from the light within thing, because I think this is actually, to me, it sounds like the ability to, sort of connect at a at a deeper level with everything that is alive, or even everything which isn't. But it's like empathy at a at a much, at a glorified level. And so I think the other thing that you were talking about, the light within and stuff, which is another aspect, I think that's more individual, whereas this is like, being able to see and feel everybody else and everything else. So, becoming one with everyone else. So seeing that there's no difference between me and you, me and the tree, me and the stone, me and so feeling that sense of continuity. So I think this is different from that. Because you said they were actually similar. I just felt these two are different.
It depends. When you use the word see, what are you meaning? If it is still a mental activity, that, I mean, when you say empathy, where does it arise from?
From within, right? It arises from within, where you're not thinking about how are you similar with the tree or how are you similar with another person. You just feel that sense of connection, right? So when you feel that sense of connection and you realize that there's a universality across everybody and everything, that doesn't necessarily mean that I am looking at it from my inner light. My inner light may be my inner light for me, but the connectivity that I have with everything else is, I feel another aspect. I mean, I feel those are two different aspects. I don't think, I feel that they're not the same. That's all.
Just trying to point out to you that when we use these words, feel, inner, realize, we are still operating within the domain of the mind and the vital. Of course, there are levels and levels. Even people who act from the mind, then maybe after 5 years, there is another layer of the mind that opens up, which is deeper and closer to the psyche. But still, at least what my understanding is, that what the mother here is talking about, there is, it is not in the no, in the sense we say feel, realize, and all. It is like a different faculty opens up in you, which is not coming from the vital, which is not coming from the mind, which is directly from the psychic. And it is an experience. You don't even have to think, you don't even have to feel. Uh, it is just a different experience. I don't know how to describe it.
No,
But
I agree. No, I'm not in disagreement. I'm just saying that
you
is
feel
it similar with the same feeling of the light within, that paragraph that you had earlier.
whatever works for you, whatever works for you. If you connect more with that and that feels like the aspect which you feel you connect with of the psychic, yeah, it might be a different aspect. For me, these are all, uh, yeah, further explanations, further, ways to understand what the psychic is. Like right in the beginning, the mother said that, it's very difficult to explain it in words or to the mind. So, what phrase resonates with you, which reaches you and explains, opens up something in you? That is the main thing. So, I was just pointing out that this thing itself, because this is something I've tried a few times, uh, it can work as a meditation, just like the other one, that the coming in touch with the light within you. Anything anybody else wants to say before we move on? Okay. Okay, let's read the two paragraphs together. Kirti, do you want to take these two up? Kirti, are you there? Are you frozen? I think she's traveling, so yeah, Kirti, are you with us? You are on mute.
Yes, Anuradha. In between, the connection sometimes gets off, but I'm very much.
Try and read. Okay, I think we will wait for you to reach somewhere because again you are frozen. Prerna, may I ask you to read, please?
Sure, Didi, sure. But as I have already said, the path to that realization is long and difficult, strewn with snares and problems to be solved, which demand an unfailing determination. It is like the explorer's trek through virgin forest in quest of an unknown land, of some great discovery. The psychic being is also a great discovery which requires at least as much fortitude and endurance as the discovery of a new continent. A few simple words of advice may be useful to one who has resolved to undertake it. The first and perhaps the most important point is that the mind is incapable of judging spiritual things. All those who have written on this subject have said so, but very few are those who have put it into practice. And yet, in order to proceed on the path, it is absolutely indispensable to abstain from all mental opinion and reaction.
Thank you. So I suppose this is clear. So, but she said, of course, this point we had earlier also, that it is a very difficult endeavor. And this is the first thing she says. So, which means that one has to try and connect to another consciousness other than the mind. And the mind has to be quiet and not rationalize and not analyze. It is not the same as, because many religions and many, even in Sri Aurobindonian circles, I've met people who interpret it as uh, you have to ignore the mind. There is no need to cultivate the mind. You just have to go to the psychic. But that would be untrue of, then it won't be an integral yoga. if any of the powers given to us by the divine, whether it's the physical or the vital or the mental, if we have to ignore and not cultivate those, then it is like the ascetic yogas, for which you don't. So again, also indicates that this aphorism, which I must have shared earlier also from Sri Aurobindo, mind was the helper, mind is the bar. So till this point, till you get into the psychic discovery or the quest for the psychic, mind is a helper because it helps you also in the other domains, whether the vital or the physical, and then itself to rise into the other levels of the mind. But when you start this journey, for this quest, mind becomes a bar. Because here the rules are different, the proofs are different. They cannot be the usual proofs which have to be tested in a lab or something. So that is a point Mother is emphasizing before she goes on to the rest of the things that she will talk about. It is absolutely indispensable to abstain from all mental opinion and reaction. So one has to be a quiet witness to what is happening. So the mind will be there to witness. Ila, would you like to? I don't know whether we should read one by one. Maybe you can pause after a point and you can read 3-4 points.
Okay. Give up all personal seeking for comfort, satisfaction, enjoyment, or happiness. Be only a burning fire for progress. Take whatever comes to you as an aid to your progress and immediately make whatever progress is required. Wow, if only we could.
Yes. That's
Straight up.
what she writes in this is quite amazing. Normally you would think, oh, psychic discovery, she will say you have to sit down, spend this much time in meditation, eat this kind of food. There are all those things, normally one would think she would speak about that. Now, the first line I want you to focus on, if we were to look only at this line, how can it be interpreted? Give up all personal seeking for comfort, satisfaction, enjoyment, or happiness.
I think basically what she's saying is start embracing the difficulty that's in your life and stop trying to take an easy way out and look for, being comfortable all the time. Get uncomfortable. It's okay.
Okay, so that speaks to the comfort part. What about the others?
Same with, I'm using the word comfort to mean sort of, it's all in the same ballpark, whether it's comfort or satisfaction. It's all good stuff. We all seek good things. We want happiness, we want satisfaction, we want, people to praise us, we want comfort, enjoyment, whatever it is. She's saying, forget about all that. Just get into the whole discomfort thing. Let all this go. Don't chase after those things. Chase after the stuff that actually gives you progress.
Right. So you are already going to the second sentence. I said, just look at the first sentence.
I mean, it's linked, right? I mean, that's the basis of the second thing is
We wanted
don't go this way, go another way.
go on just if we were to focus on the first sentence, this can be interpreted as, and what many religious teachings also say, and that is why it leads to sannyas. Give up all material possessions, renounce the world, go away from relationships, go away from people, torture your body, sit in a cave, all those kind of things. Of course, that is also very, very difficult to do, but that is why the second sentence becomes important. Because if we look only at the first sentence, it can also be interpreted as that. Be only a burning fire for progress. So, like Ila was saying, this seeking for comfort, satisfaction, enjoyment, or happiness has to be replaced by seeking for progress. And she uses strong words: be only a burning fire for progress. Take whatever comes to you as an aid to your progress, so whether a good thing or a bad thing. So it does not mean if something happiness comes, I say, no, no, mother has said I should not be happy. So, yes.
Though I missed a bit, but what I feel is that if it comes or it doesn't come, you shouldn't lose your sense of seeking for the progress. You don't have to go after it. But if it comes, you don't have to go out of your way to reject it also. That's it.
Right. Now, another down, that people become very serious, grim, only focused on progress. It can also lead to a lot of grimness. But if you look at people who have really realized something, are connected to their psychic, you will see a lot of joy in their being, a lightness of being, smile, joy. So, this, so again, basically, why I'm pointing it out, because these are maybe phases all of us go through, where we start avoiding happiness, comfort, etc. And, uh, an ascetic phase kind of thing. And here, where we become too serious about sadhana and yoga and forget the joy of life. So she says, take whatever comes to you as an aid and immediately make whatever progress is required. There's this beautiful bhajan of Meera. If you've watched that film Meera by Gulzar, I don't know how many of you have, but that song, Karna Fakiri Fir Kya Dilgiri. I don't know if you've heard. That, Kirti has heard, of course. So that says it's a very, it talks about uh, koi din ladu to koi din whatever.
मैं मगन रहना जी.
Faka, matlab, someday you might be feasting and someday you might be fasting. Whatever circumstances come, you just take and you are still happy through every. Now, that happiness is obviously different from this happiness. That's a deeper joy of the being. Yeah, next one, Ila.
Um, Try to take pleasure in all you do, but never do anything for the sake of pleasure. Never get excited, nervous, or agitated. Remain. I
These
mean,
are, these
oh,
are,
up? Okay.
so is this clear, Sagarika? Take pleasure in all you do, but don't do it for pleasure. Because it will give me pleasure, so let me do it. But whatever you are doing, take pleasure in it. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Shall I continue?
yeah. Continue.
Never get excited, nervous, or agitated. Remain perfectly calm in the face of all circumstances, and yet be always alert to discover what progress you still have to make and lose no time in making it.
So, this is even when things don't go as per our wishes, or we make mistakes, or there's a crisis, or something unexpected. So, basically, maintaining that equanimity, which the Bhagavad Gita speaks about, maintaining that equanimity, remaining perfectly calm, and yet alert. So, calmness is not the same as passivity. Bhagwan ki ichha, jo hona tha ho gaya. Many people think that is equanimity. That's not equanimity, that is inertia and passivity, which has been a major reason for India's downfall. So, calmness is a poise of the being, and yet be always alert to discover what progress you still have to make. So, we learn from our mistakes and lose no time in making it. Somewhere else, the mother has said it is okay to make mistakes, but don't make the same mistake twice. Something like that, she said. You can make as many mistakes as you want to, but don't do it twice. Yes, Prerna.
I'm still confused in second line. Try to take a pleasure in all you do, understood, but never do anything for the sake of pleasure. I'm just wondering, uh, we ultimately try to do from not pleasure, but where we get satisfaction, where we get somewhat contentment. Uh, because in all lines, the mother is trying to say ki accept all the circumstances and grow. But accepting everything, there should be a path where we should try to move. And somewhere that path, if I have three things to decide, pleasure or happiness is a one thing. Matlab, how will I decide? Circumstances are there, but if there are two, three things to decide, मतलब pleasure के लिए तो आप कुछ करोगे ही ना, मतलब that's maybe I'm at that stage.
Obviously, you see, first thing one has to understand, as a concept, one has to understand, yeah? And this is also connected to the first chapter we read, The Science of Living.
Hmm.
Mother spoke about that progress, happiness is not the aim of life.
Mm.
If you make happiness the aim of life, then you don't want to change.
Mm.
Get stuck to your comfort, get stuck because that is same as pleasure and all that. So if progress is the aim of life, then this applies. If I have not come to a point, and honestly, I personally also have not, where I'm a burning fire for progress, I have not reached there. So the day it becomes that I'm only a burning fire for progress, and also if I take this attitude, it will help me to become that burning fire. At times I am, at times I'm not. So this is the evolution. There is a seeking in us, we want to do it. But if I understand the concept, I also have to be brutally honest with myself and acknowledge that when I feed my children food, for example, and I'm very happy they are eating, or when I give in to my mother in law and do something for the sake of keeping the peace
Mm.
at the cost of my soul,
Mm.
is it, is it for social norm to maintain you understand?
Yes, I'm understand.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh, there is a very funny anecdote mother narrated once. When she was in Japan, she talked of a person, a very fine young man, with whom she used to meditate. Sometimes he would come and he wanted the mother to meditate with him. This was before the ashram was started or anything, before she settled in India from France when the World War broke out. Her husband and she went to Japan because her husband didn't join the war, but he was given a commission in the government to, there was some exchange or something he had to work out. So they were in Japan, living in Japan for 5, 6 years. So this fellow used to come and meditate with her. And one day in the meditation, it was a very deep, and he kind of touched the psychic. He had a experience. And then he ran away. And he left a letter, or he told the mother, I'll have to check it again. But the reason for his running away was, he said, if I follow this path and I listen to my soul, I will not be able to listen to the emperor, to the authorities. It will be in conflict. So I cannot do this. So you understand what I'm saying? That was his choice.
Mhm. Mm.
Sometimes it is not always that my soul will be in sync with the social norms,
Yes.
expectations of my family or my dearest ones or people I look up to, people I seek approval from. So one has to say, okay, this is happening, and but right now I'm not strong enough, or I choose to you know. But one has to be honest with oneself. That's the most important thing.
Be reflective and keep questioning yourself from not doing action for what, from which voice it's coming.
Self-judgment and feeling depressed about it.
Mhm.
It's a long path through lifetimes. So the most important, and you just offer it to the mother that today I'm not able to do it. I aspire that one day I will be. Please prepare me for it, you know. And this is what is stopping me, and I offer it to you. So you will notice that this whole chapter is written from a very different and for a different audience. She's not saying what you should do with children. Whereas in other chapters, she spoke about what should be done with children. Here, she is only speaking of actually what we should do ourselves. So she's speaking to the teachers what teachers should do for themselves. She's not saying what you have to do with children. That is another mistake people make. Without realizing this, now we will tell children, don't take pleasure, don't do things for pleasure, you know, whereas we have not reached there ourselves. So, okay, so this point was clear to you, Prerna, or you were still busy with the first one?
No, this was like, yeah, with the.
Okay, these two also you read, stop after each one, Ella.
Okay. Never take physical happenings at their face value. They're always a clumsy attempt to express something else, the true thing which escapes our superficial understanding.
Is the difficult one.
Please explain it. I couldn't understand this.
Yeah.
I have a take.
Yeah.
So I would see this as, you know, it's like, say, for example, what happens, and I'm, analogously, what happens in the body, for example, if something is happening to your body, like if you're sick or if you have an ailment, if you just look at the body itself, you just look at the physical thing that's happening to you, you have a headache or you have a stomach ache or you have whatever, you can keep it at that level. You can keep it superficial. Or you can say, what is it that is causing it? How can I look within to see what is it that is actually making this manifest within me? So I think what she's saying here is that, when something happens at a physical level, and I don't mean just at the body, but I mean at in the five senses, in the realm of the five senses, then there is something else that is actually going on. It's not just what you can see, hear, touch, and feel, but there is something else. And just try and understand what that something else could be that is making you use the filters that you're using to interpret what is actually happening to you.
Yeah, sure. Yes, Pooja.
I am looking at it from as that whatever is happening around us, we do not like it. And because it doesn't go as per our plans, supposing some things are not going as per our plans, and we get discouraged and it bothers us and we get into despair, but we shouldn't be looking at the superficial, looking at it from our superficial understanding, because ultimately the plan is not revealed to us, and we may not like it at that point of time, but it always ends up that something else, something better is waiting for us, or we have to take certain other paths that we should be taking.
Yeah, that is also there, of course. So if one converts it into actual examples at various levels, both of them gave examples, Ila and Pooja. Suppose somebody slaps you. Okay. Now, of course, it depends who's the person slapping. You can only look at it and get very angry, or somebody's nasty to you, says mean things to you, you feel hurt. You can stay there at the emotional level, or you can carry out a reflection at various levels. One is just like for the body, so to understand what is going on within me, which made it possible for such a negative interaction to happen? In what way am I responsible? Where did I contribute to it? What was the opening in me which brought this on? And the other is also to look at the other person and circumstances and try and understand what is deeper. It is not to say every time you will be in the wrong and the other person will be in the right. It is not that. It is beyond wrong and right. In fact, Sri Aurobindo's book, The Human Cycle, is all about this only, where he's looking at all the events in the history of the earth and decoding them from this angle only. That if World War II happened, or World War I happened, or Roman civilization uh, became extinct, what was behind it, or when it rose, what were the causes, what was behind it, what were the circumstances indicating at, what was the human psychology which contributed to it, made it possible. What was the social psychology which made it possible? What was the divine intention of nature behind it, which brought about such suffering? Why did India get enslaved? So, all various examples. So, it is the same thing. Never take physical happenings. Physical happenings doesn't mean just with the body. Anything that happens in the world is a physical happening because it is happening in the realm of matter. They are always a clumsy attempt to express something else, the true thing which escapes our superficial understanding. So, taking the inner view, stepping back, reflecting on it, if this has happened. So, it can be in anything when a child, two children fight, then understanding what could be behind it. It is the same principle which we have been talking about, Sagarika, whether vis-a-vis, the planning or evaluating the children in Lavani, that you have to look at something. What is the child indicating? How do you understand the need of the child through their outer behavior? How do you understand the progress they've made through their outer behavior? It's the same. Go deeper. Okay?
Never complain of the behavior of anyone unless you have the power to change in his nature what makes him act in this way. And if you have the power, change him instead of complaining.
So complaining comes so easily to us.
Yeah, but I think, again, I just feel that all of what she's saying is so relevant, meaning that if we could only practice one third of what she's saying, it would
One
be so much better.
one thing, even if one of the points we can practice.
That's what, anything, any part of it. It's all very, stern, good stuff.
So never complain of the behavior of anyone. If you have the power to change that person, then change the person instead of complaining. And if you don't have the power, don't complain. Clear? Shall we go ahead? Okay, Sagarika, why don't you read this paragraph?
Yes. Whatever you do, never forget the goal which you have set before you. There is nothing great or small once you have set out on this great discovery. All things are equally important and can either hasten or delay its success. Thus, thus, before you eat, concentrate a few seconds in the aspiration that the food you are about to eat may bring your body the substance it needs to serve as a solid basis for your effort towards the great discovery and give it the energy for persistence and perseverance in the effort.
Okay. So the goal being that if you have set out on this path of wanting to discover the psychic, then each and every circumstance of life, from what your daily routine of eating and everything else, even that can become an occasion which will help you to discover the psychic. So she's not again saying ki meditate and do this, that. She's saying even when you eat, concentrate a few seconds in the aspiration that the food you are about to eat, no matter what food it is, that it may bring your body the substance it needs. Why? Not for health or anything. Of course, health will be a consequence, but aim here is not health. To serve as a solid basis, that the body becomes a solid basis through the intake of this food for my effort towards discovery of the psychic. Because this discovery has to happen in the body, not outside the body. So body is the adhara, the foundation in which my spiritual endeavor has to happen. So this you will again and again see. There is no neglect of the body anywhere. And give it the energy for persistence, energy so that it doesn't lose heart, it keeps persisting in the effort and perseveres in the effort, continues consistently. So the food itself can become one of the ways in which you reconnect with your aspiration. And because we eat food 3-4 times a day, every time if we do this, then every time we are taking a moment to step back and fortify that aspiration. But just mechanically to close your eyes before you start eating serves no purpose. It is to concentrate in the aspiration, this aspiration. If I can connect to that, whether by closing my eyes or keeping them open or whatever way, that is what is important. So it's like consecrating the food. You make the food sacred. Even if you're eating junk food or street food, you make it sacred through this. Clear? Yes, Sagarika, read this one also. You're on mute.
Sorry. Before you go to sleep, concentrate a few seconds in the aspiration that the sleep may restore your fatigued nerves. Bring calm and quietness to your brain so that on waking you may, with renewed vigor, begin again your journey on the path of the great discovery.
This is clear enough, I suppose.
Mhm.
Okay, why don't you continue with the other two also? Read one by one.
Okay. Before you act, concentrate in the will that your action may help or at least in no way hinder your march forward towards in the great discovery. Okay. Yes.
So even if it doesn't help, at least
Mm.
come in the way of your own forward march towards discovering the psychic. Clear?
Mm.
Yeah.
When you speak, before the words come out of your mouth, concentrate just long enough to check your words and allow only those that are absolutely necessary to pass. Only those that are not in any way harmful to your progress on the path of the great discovery.
This is the tapasya of speech. So she spoke of food, she spoke the rather eating she spoke of, and she spoke of sleep and act and speaking. Basically, it takes care of our entire day because that's what we do. We act, we speak, we sleep, we eat.
And action also,
We act, I said, no? We act.
Action also.
And action, if you take it in the way that it's being described in the Bhagavad Gita, what we are reading, then it is everything, even your thoughts, even your breath, everything is action. So before the words come out of the mouth, concentrate just long enough to check your words. This is stepping back, and allow only those that are absolutely necessary to pass. So, economy of speech, to use only, to conserve words. We talk of environmental conservation, but also to conserve words, how much we speak. Only those that are not in any way harmful to your progress on the path of the great discovery.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay, harmful to matlab, our progress, that is not clear to me.
So when I get angry,
Hmm.
mean things to somebody, or I make fun of them, or I gossip, or I complain, it is not helping me in progress towards the psychic. But more than that, it is actually harming my consciousness. It is lowering my consciousness.
But when is the situation comes to me, matlab, I get matlab, I get sad or upset when I have to say somebody because I could not understand what is happening, what happened to her or him. So that I could not share anything that I get upset for that behavior and all. So is this harmful?
Not what you say, it is why you say it and how you say it. If you are speaking from a poise, your inner poise, it will not harm the other person, nor will it harm you.
I don't
But
understand
when
that
you
question.
to reach that inner poise, that's why before the words come out of your mouth, concentrate just long enough. So, this stepping back, now that long enough might be 1 day, 2 days, it might be 1 minute or 5 seconds. Depends on the second. It is not that you don't share. You don't, if you are upset, you pretend you are happy and you are on the path of progress and you are feeling very calm. It is not that. But what is your purpose in sharing? Is it to hurt the other person? Is it to just vent out yourself? Is it to move towards a better relationship, create harmony, understanding between each other? So many things which can be. Yes, Ila.
I didn't understand Sagarika's question.
Sagarika, please explain to Ila.
Um, like जब हार मतलब अपसेट हो गई हूँ किसी की बिहेवियर से और किसी की बातों से, क्या मैं ये किसी को बोल नहीं सकती कि मतलब उनको नहीं और किसी को, जैसे कि इसके कारण मुझे ये फील हुआ और ऐसा हुआ, वो सिचुएशन क्यों हुआ, मतलब वो कि दैट इज
Third person.
थर्ड पर्सन, यस। सो अबाउट दैट, मतलब क्यों ऐसा हुआ, उसने क्यों मेरे साथ ऐसा किया कि आई कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड, मतलब ये सिचुएशन क्यों हुआ, दैट it's kind of it's a complaining like this, but I'm not complaining because I could not understand what happened, मतलब मेरा इंटेंशन शायद वो नहीं था, पर मेरा उनसे वो रिएक्शन ऐसा हुआ। तो ये जानने के लिए से ये that
Always
kind
lots of things mixed up. When we are hurt by somebody,
mm,
don't talk to them, but we go to somebody else, and we say, I'm sharing this with you because I feel you will be able to explain to me what happened. But then the way I share itself is very biased by my own emotions. Subtly, I'm blaming the other person. Subtly, I'm holding the other person responsible for my unhappiness, for hurting me. So, if all that is mixed up, then your consciousness gets lower. That's why the mother says, don't complain about anybody's behavior. Does it mean you have to suppress your feelings? No. Well, ideally, you should express it to the divine. You have to complain to the mother. Complain in any which way, as children do. But the moment you do it to a human being, that human being's ego, their own biases, their own vibrations, no matter how evolved the person is, and your own dynamics with that person, plus your dynamics with the other person who we are talking about, it gets very complicated. I'm not saying don't do it ever, do it, observe yourself what happens. Try and become more and more perceptive. And I'm saying it from very much of years of personal experience, where now I feel that actually it doesn't really help. Speaking to the most evolved person also does not help. It is something one has to work out in oneself only. Yeah, Ila.
I'd like to qualify that actually, because I think it does help when you speak to someone, but I think it would help if one took out the aspect of the person and analyze the situation rather than I felt, he felt, she said, he said, but to examine actually what is happening in the situation and really try and look at it objectively rather than subjectively. Because usually what happens is because we are one of the injured parties, everything is from our point of view. You know, this is what happened. He said, and I said, and she said, I don't know what's going on. But if one just steps back a little bit and says, okay, so here's the situation. Let's assume two people who I don't really know did this. Then how do we understand what is actually going on? So if we try and remove ourselves from it and look at it, and I think that's helpful actually, because sometimes it's quite difficult to be a third party in your own scenario, you know, looking at your own life. But if you talk to somebody else who has perspective, like for example, if I were to tell you about something that happened, say, in a BLED group that I was doing, and I said, you know, Anuradha, this is what was going on, you'd probably be able to see something that I couldn't because I was there, even though I was trying to be dispassionate about it. You know, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but what Sagarika is talking about are very, very personal emotions where there are deep relationships and where she's hurt by somebody's behavior in the family or in her close, very close circle. And then she approaches, and I know who she approaches also. So when she approaches, then what happens? And should she not do that? She's talking about that. So if she's able to step away and speak in an unbiased way, already the need, already, she's moved away from the hurt. That is precisely what's difficult. And because one finds it difficult, so one has to voice it to somebody. That voicing is also a process of stepping away from it. So, to that extent, it helps, but there's collateral.
But can I say something? Can you hear me?
And
Hello?
it also engages the other person's vibrations and other dynamics begin.
I think Kirti wants to say something.
No, I was thinking in a broader sense, in a situation, if you talk to the person who's of the same consciousness, the level, I mean, then it could be something which, not very healthy to confide in. But somebody who's a little more, evolved is the word I can use. The understanding is deeper and wider. Then if we confide in that person, wouldn't that be relieving ourselves and taking off our stress?
Of course, it relieves you. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, best is to vent out to the divine. If you don't want any collateral, and in fact, if you want to rise higher in your consciousness, the moment you do it to any human being, who's not an avatar. You do it to a human being, then that human being is not free of egoism also, na? They might be evolved in their consciousness, but they're not all the time living at that 100% level. So there is always a collateral. That at least that's been my experience. And I feel that uh, what the mother here is saying and combining it with, because Sagarika combined it with that complaining thing, that point. So there, if you really want to progress, then you have to. But this evolution might take 20 years, doesn't matter. I also said that for me, it has taken many, many years to realize this and not even feel the need to discuss with somebody or to express to somebody has more or less gone, be it in the family, be it in my work circle, be it in my friend circle. Because I understand that, you see, also at a very practical level, if I have a close friend and I have a tiff with them, and suppose I were to talk about it to my sister, who also I'm very close with, she doesn't have the same relationship with my friend that I have. Her viewing of my friend will be colored by what I'm saying. I don't even want that. I don't want anybody to view my friend negatively in any way. But I am opening the door for that negativity. So that's what I'm saying. It becomes very complex. I think we have to stop here today. Yeah, this is. So that's why it is, Sagarika, it is very difficult, and none of us who are sitting here have been able to practice even one point. So don't feel disheartened. But Mother is showing us the way, and that is what we have to at least try and practice. Some days I suddenly become conscious and I offer my food. Another day I forget to do, because I don't want to do it mechanically, na? कि अब मुझे करना ही करना है. So some days I practice something else. But yeah, if I was consistent, my progress would be much faster. So one has to be honest that this is where I am, not justify, but act from where. Like once, I mean, just to end on a lighter note, once I was attracted to somebody, I really wanted to maybe marry them or something like that. And I went to the Samadhi in the ashram, and that time I was having a very nice, this was before we started the center. I was having very nice inner experiences also. And from hindsight, I say foolishly, but that time that's what I was. I told Sri Aurobindo, I know you can wait. Let me focus on this chap at the moment. Then anyway, Sri Aurobindo ensured that it didn't come to anything, so I had to come back to him. But I really went to the Samadhi and told him this. So you have to be honest. Okay? Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Right. So we are on the psychic education and the spiritual education chapter. And the mother was talking about the psychic. Describing it, giving it a little idea about it as something which is free of a particular life or circumstances or identities. And it's like a light that shines deep in the center of the being. And then she gives certain indications for those who wish to undertake this journey by themselves. Going from mind is incapable of judging spiritual things. Give up all seeking for personal comfort and instead to be focused on progress. Taking pleasure in all that one does, to remain calm in face of all circumstances, to go behind the surface appearances of whatever happens, not to complain, and to include everything small and big in one's endeavor, right from the food one eats, how one eats it, the way to sleep, before one acts, to concentrate in the will that your action may help one's march towards the great discovery, and similarly before the words come out of one's mouth. We will take up from here this time. These two paragraphs can be read together. Kirti, you can start.
Yeah. To sum up, never forget the purpose and goal of your life. The will for the great discovery should be always there above you, above what you do and what you are, like a huge bird of light dominating all the movements of your being. Before the untiring persistence of your effort, an inner door will suddenly open and you will emerge into a dazzling splendor that will bring you the certitude of immortality, the concrete experience that you have always lived and always shall live. The external form alone perish, and that these forms are in relation to what you are in reality, like clothes that are thrown away when worn out. Then you will stand erect, freed from all chains, and instead of advancing laboriously under the weight of circumstances imposed upon you by nature, which you had to endure and bear if you did not want to be crushed by them, you will be able to walk on, straight and firm, conscious of your destiny, master of your life.
Yeah. Anything that anybody wants to say, ask, throw light on?
One thing I wanted to ask was when you were reading about the main points about the psychic being, to see behind the surface. Can we elaborate on that? I mean,
Yeah, so at the individual level, when something happens, let's say a crisis or a difficulty or a failure, a mistake, an unpleasant interaction, a conflict, whatever, generally we just respond from the surface and evaluate it as something that has happened for various reasons. But we don't generally try to go behind that, what are the movements taking place in the atmosphere around oneself, within one's being, how, uh, what has led to that interaction. I mean, that's one example. There can be several others, but not stopping at the surface. And that is also for not just emotional interactions, but also for and even for gifts which come to one, not just negatives, but also strengths or positive experiences, and also world events uh, at a larger level also. For example, these days we are living in a very kind of a tumultuous time. So to understand what is, try and understand what is happening behind the scenes, so to say, from the perspective of consciousness and evolution. That is what is being pointed out here. Because the mind is incapable of judging. So although we will use the mind, the faculty of reasoning and observing and reflecting, but mind will not be ultimately able to give the true knowledge. That can be a starting point, but ultimately this perception of sometimes it happens with oneself. There has been something that happened, and you start reflecting on yourself, on how you were in that situation, or instead of focusing on the how the other person was wrong, or how the other person contributed, or what you did right, or even what you did wrong. Forget about that. And if there is an aspiration for progress, you just concentrate in that will, and suddenly sometimes a phrase or a word rises up in your consciousness that this is the issue, this is what one needs to work on, whether in the relationship or in oneself. And that doesn't come from the mind. It is just, you just become quiet, and suddenly you receive what needs to be worked on. Am I making sense?
Yes. Yes, one has to now reflect on it, because normally there's a stage when at the hindsight you realize, okay, it was all leading us to. But to be on the present, during the present moment, one has to now come to a point where you're not reacting. You are being, what you are saying is be centered and think in a wider perspective. Think money to bring the psychic out. As you said, sometimes it just comes when you focus enough.
Yes. This is what is actually the most challenging, because it is also further on, the mother is using the imagery from the Bhagavad Gita, and that is the central message of the Bhagavad Gita also, of doing your action with your utmost passion and dedication and sincerity, and yet not being affected by the result, and accepting the result as something which was meant to be. But these are contradictory attitudes. When we think from the mind, these are contradictions. Because if you think, anyway, what is going to happen is destined, it is meant to be, it takes away from your passion and your self giving and your effort. Because you feel, what's the point? Anyway, what is destined will happen. Yeah. And also, then when some mistake happens or something, suppose you put in half an effort and things go wrong, you say, yeah, this was the God's will, this was to happen, without having been fully sincere. So that is where the catch is, that how one and that your only inner consciousness can know, because the mind can really play games with these things, because they are contradictory concepts.
Thank you. Justify, mind justifies in a jiffy. So that one has to be very, very careful about and
Even-
conscious.
One takes the credit, something good happens. Credit taking is also there. So here again, the will word is coming, what we saw in the vital. Earlier also Mother spoke about it in this chapter, that how important it is to have because it's a very difficult task and it has to be done constantly. So this will has to be there. And then untiring persistence of your effort. So this obviously has to be there. And then this is an experience. This is not a thought, this is not a concept, it is an actual experience. That an inner door suddenly opens and one emerges into a dazzling splendor that brings the certitude of immortality. Because one gets in touch with the part that never dies, that is traveled from life to life. That's by the certitude of immortality. It doesn't mean physical immortality. Certitude of immortality, immortality of the self, S with a capital S, a self with capital S, of the true self. The concrete experience that you have lived always shall live, external forms perish. And then what happens? The result is, it is not that the circumstances change. Here she's not saying that immediately everything changes, but your response to the circumstances changes. You stand erect, freed from all chains, instead of advancing laboriously, which you had to endure and bear, and you will be able to walk on straight and firm, conscious of your destiny, master of your life. So, this mastery is mastery of one's inner response and therefore of the outer response. Yes, Ila.
So my question is, I think that all this revolves around, the purpose and goal of your life. So if you know the purpose and goal of your life, and that is like, what is driving you, then all this will follow. I think the first thing is to have that. But my question is, what is that? And is that the same for everyone? So has she defined it in terms of what your purpose and goal is? Like the first line says, to sum up, never forget the purpose and goal of your life. So, what exactly is she referring to here? Is it something that we define for ourselves, or is it something that she has defined for all of us?
There are two levels to it. First of all, purpose and goal, it's not a mental goal. Here, when she says, never forget the purpose and goal of your life, this is the psychic discovery. Because this chapter is totally when she uses the word great discovery, adventure, goal, untiring, persistent towards this goal and all. It is once you've put your being has decided that I want to discover the psychic, it is that goal she's talking about. And the reason that goal is important is what she spoke about in the first chapter we read, The Science of Living. There, to the extent, till the point we come till here, that goal is ours because we are deciding it through our whatever faculties of mind are available to us. And we can decide it for 1 year, for 1 day, for lifetime. But that evolves, that keeps changing as we evolve. That's what she spoke about in The Science of Living, to have an aim and to make it as wide and generous and disinterested as one can, because then life starts having value, meaning. And she also established there that it is not happiness, and especially in the chapter on vital, she established it, that happiness is not the goal of life, progress is. So when you say, is she defining it? In that sense, she's defining it when she's saying it's not happiness, but progress. All the time, progress may not give us happiness, but it can lead us to joy instead of happiness. Pleasure and happiness are not the goals. So then by the time we have arrived here, now it has become the discovery of the psyche. Yes.
But we're also supposed to have our own goals, right? I mean, these are the broader overarching goals, but we're also supposed to have our own goals, right? Because she says everyone should have an aim and a purpose. So those are different, and those are like what, day to day kind of regular normal goals, and this is the overarching goal. So you're supposed to have both, you're supposed to aspire towards both.
Yes, because, and that we do actually. When I set tomorrow I have to do this, that, and the other, I have to prepare for the workshop, I have to have this meeting. Those are my very, very micro goals, yeah. And they are important to give meaning to my day, to focus my energies, to bring out my effort, to motivate me, etc., etc. But also, there are, I set for the year also, or unconsciously or consciously, I am working towards something. Now, many a times there is a contradiction between what I set as my aim and what my being is preoccupied with. And if we step back and observe ourselves, we will see that when the moment we let go of the mental control, that, oh, I have to work towards this meeting, that exercise, that whatever it is. What does the being relapse into? What is it most comfortable with and it wants to do and it looks forward to doing? That is actually the indication what is the most abiding poise of my consciousness in my present evolution. So now, if you are on the path of integral yoga, then you have to raise that poise. You may be stationed in the physical or the vital or the mental, and you have to become aware, and then you have to gradually raise it. If you can straight away raise it to the psychic, very good, but that aspiration has to be there. Anyway, if you come to the path of yoga, it is that aspiration that has brought one. Well, may not be conscious of it all the time, but it is that which has pushed us towards this. So then, as you evolve in all these domains, the goal of integral yoga is to let the psychic voice become more and more dominant. And the poise, like naturally, like mother has talked about herself when she was organizing the ashram or when she was busy with works. Well, she was always busy with, except maybe for the last few years of her life, physical life. She was always busy with humongous projects and hardly slept, and her whole day and night was full of action. But the moment she was not outwardly busy, she was with the divine. I mean, that is what gave her the maximum happiness or joy or bliss or whatever. That was, even since she was 4 years old, that was the how she used to like spending her time. So her poise was already established in the inner being. I know mine is not. I can only speak for myself. So, to move more and more towards this, and then when that happens, then each psychic has this broad goal of uniting with the divine, but your swadharma will be different. What you discover why you have come upon earth to achieve in this lifetime will be different from what I have come for. So, there it becomes individual again. Anything else, or shall we go ahead?
I think Nishi wanted to say something.
Nishi?
Yes, yes, Didi. I didn't really want to say something, but it was interesting that the question that Ela asked, and just before that, I was thinking that uh, I got reminded of the very first session that we had, and which said that an aimless life is a miserable life. And I thought this summed up so beautifully here, and reminded us of where we began from.
And like this, the same you find in Sri Aurobindo, the same here. How, because mother has written these chapters. You see, I think I said in the beginning, there are very few writings of the mother. She's mostly conversed, and that has been recorded and transcribed. There are very few writings of the mother which she has actually herself written out. So there now, if you see the progression, and the same I find in the Tales of All Times, the stories she told to little children in the school, there is a progression. She very gently uh, builds it up. The word psychic has not been used except maybe in the first chapter. I don't remember it was used. Maybe it was, I don't know. But in all the other three chapters, she never said that I'm moving you towards the psychic. And she started with the aim, and now she is revealing the depth of it. Depth of it. But at each level, for the physical, it was another aim. For the vital, it was another. For the mind, it was another. So, okay. Pooja, you want to read these two passages? You are on mute, Pooja.
Oh, I thought I unmuted. And yet, this release from all slavery to the flesh, this liberation from all personal attachment, is not the supreme fulfillment. There are other steps to climb before you reach the summit. And even these steps can and should be followed by others, which will open the doors to the future. These following steps will form the object of what I call spiritual education. But before we enter on this new stage and deal with the question in detail, an explanation is necessary. Why is a distinction made between the psychic education of which we have just spoken and the spiritual education of which we are about to speak now? Because the two are usually confused under the general term of yogic discipline, although the goals they aim at are very different. For one, it is a higher realization upon earth, for the other, an escape from all earthly manifestation, even from the whole universe, a return to the unmanifest.
Hmm. So now from psychic, she's going to the spiritual. And the psychic realization, she says, it's a release from all slavery to the flesh. To the flesh, it doesn't mean the way, well, in a way it does. Generally, the term is used only about gluttony and sex, but basically from the physical consciousness, the desires, everything included, from all personal attachment. But she says this is not the supreme fulfillment. There are many other steps. And even those steps which she is going to define are followed by others. So she indicates that there is much more beyond spiritual also, but she doesn't lay it out here. I mean, this is also quite a lot to digest and practice, of course. And then she points out this question that why is psychic and spiritual being taken up separately? Because soul and spirit generally are taken to be one. Spiritual education, generally the term in lay parlance, when we say spiritual education, it means things to do with soul and the spirit, depending on which tradition is interpreting it. But generally, this distinction is not made between psychic, the Atman, and the Jivatman, the spiritual consciousness. In one of the sessions, I think I spoke about it, that the two chakras are different and the roles are different. So that's what she's saying, that the aims are very different. For the psychic, the aim is higher realization upon earth without giving up this material life, to deal with life from this inner divine poise with the knowledge of one's swadharma, one's purpose, why one has been born, and to refer everything to the psychic. But it is an action upon earth. This is what one can say Arjun is being asked to do in the battle of Kurukshetra. For the other, it is an escape. For the spiritual, it is an escape. Escape, the word here, I would like to see what Mother has used in French. Maybe she used escape only. But escape generally we take as negative. Okay, we can come back to this. So basically, it is becoming free, I would say, from all earthly manifestation. It depends on the intent. Like the traditional yogas, for them it was an escape because their aim was liberation, not transformation. In their understanding, body, mind, emotions were a bondage and an impediment to be given up, and only the spirit, the soul, was the only true consciousness. But here in integral yoga, everything is true. There is a hierarchy, but everything is true. So it is a release in a way, a freedom from all earthly manifestation, even from the whole universe, and a return to the unmanifest. The spiritual realization, the center here, this opens this possibility. If you have only the psychic realization, this possibility does not open up. With spiritual, it opens up. And Mother is taking up spiritual education, which means it is of importance and it is not just to escape. She's taking it up, telling the teachers about it, wanting it to happen in the ashram school. So there must be a purpose which tallies with integral yoga, which is mastery in life, not away from life.
Would it also connect to be in the world, not escape, but be detached?
Be detached comes with the psychic, that is achieved with the psychic. That's what she said, na? Liberation from all personal attachment. And that is also what Sri Krishna is telling Arjun, that the soul never dies. So who are you grieving for, etc., etc. So this is the Jivatman or the spiritual center is the doorway to realization of the cosmic, the universal divine. I mentioned the other time that this is the realization Sri Aurobindo had in the Alipur jail in 1907, when concretely everything to him was Krishna, Vasudev. Whether it was the blanket he was taking, whether it was the prison bars, whether it was the jailer, whether it was the tree in the courtyard, he could only see Krishna. So that is where you see the divine present in the universe, in everything. It's a concrete experience, not a thought. So that is the universal, the spiritual experience in integral yoga. Because when we say spiritual experience, we call anything a spiritual experience. So here in this context, spiritual meaning, spiritual center in you has opened, and many people have this experience, this out of body kind of experience. We have one student in our life divine class who had a terrible accident and was in a coma for, I don't know, a few weeks, and then he had this experience during the coma, which he remembered afterwards, which was where he felt, this. Uh, I have never asked him in detail. He has referred to it in a few classes, he keeps referring to it. But it seems like that this is the experience he had. Yeah.
What do we mean? What does she mean when she says a return to the unmanifest? What is that referring to?
So the divine has, like in traditional thing, also they say Sagun and Nirgun. The manifest divine, which is this world, the universe, all the planets, everything, creation, that is the divine manifested. But the divine is not just that. The transcendent divine. So the divine has three poises: the transcendent, which is beyond manifestation, so which is the unmanifest, the universal, and the individual. Psychic represents the individual divine, and the Jivatman, the universal divine. But every human being has their own Jivatman. It's like a guiding angel, but it does not participate. Even if you're going to die, you're going to be hit, it will not say anything. But the psychic will give an indication. If you're alert enough to listen to the inner voice, you will be saved. But this will do nothing.
So, what is its purpose?
So its purpose is not for you to lead your life well upon earth. It is the connection between the universal and the individual divine.
Oh, so when you say the transcendent, you actually mean the unmanifest, which
Yes.
is beyond what is this realm.
Anything else? Should we carry on? Let's read just one para first. Nishi?
Yes, Siddhi. So one can say that the psychic life is immortal life. Endless time, limitless space, ever progressive change, unbroken continuity in the universe of forms. The spiritual consciousness, on the other hand, means to live the infinite and the eternal, to be projected beyond all creation, beyond time and space. To become conscious of your psychic being and to live a psychic life, you must abolish all egoism. But to live a spiritual life, you must no longer have an ego.
So now one has to go into other concepts. Ego is the principle of division. When we use the word ego, it does not mean the same as we use it in day-to-day life. Oh, she has a huge ego. Ego is, how to define it? It is like when the divine wanted to manifest itself, the division was necessary because only a part of it has to manifest. So the moment we come into the world of forms, duality starts, division starts. The divine consciousness splits into two: positive, negative, formless, formed, evil, good, etc., etc. Duality begins. The principle of division is ego. Division happens, so it's like a knife which separates, and it is necessary. So the creation we are in is, the foundation of it is ego. Only because of ego, we don't merge into each other. We are not like amoeba or bacteria merging into each other. We have definite forms, we have definite identities. Table and I are not one, that is a table, I am a human being. So there is no, that is not egoism. That egoism is what we call normally ego in human life, when we say, oh, she's being very egoistic. So when you're being very divisive, very separative, uh, all the qualities, whether selfishness, this, that, all the other, that is egoism, the play of ego in human nature. But ego as a principle, if ego were not there, we would just dissolve. Ego is what is holding us together as a human being. So otherwise, we will just dissolve. So ego as a principle is essential for earthly life. But psychic is free from egoism. And psychic kind of stands behind the ego and is connected upwardly to the divine. So that's what Mother is saying. Psychic continues in time and space, and time and space requires ego. So when one becomes conscious of the psychic being and tries to live a psychic life, egoism gradually dissolves, and that's necessary. Now you can connect back to all the pointers she has given, that before you speak, so all the time progress, not your desire, not your selfishness, not your self-regarding interests, but something towards the psychic discovery. The moment you start doing that, you are not bound by egoism, because you are not just looking at your personal petty aims. You are looking for something which takes you to the divine, connects you to a much vaster consciousness. And in the process, you are giving up your habit of gossiping, of living for pleasure. So, all those actions that she has told, now you can connect that will help dissolve, abolish egoism step by step, gradually. From one's daily actions, if one starts practicing it sincerely, then gradually the egoism becomes less and less till it is abolished. Then she says, but to live a spiritual life, you must no longer have an ego. So the division will go. Because obviously, the moment you see everything as the divine, there is no division. Everything is the divine. Nothing else exists but the divine. And this is the discovery, this is the experience although this is not central to our discussion here, but this is what we have been reading in the Life Divine also, that this is the experience, a very powerful and very difficult experience to have, which led the earlier yogis, very realized beings, highly realized beings, to declare that only the spirit is true, all else is Maya, all else is an illusion. Because when you see only the divine everywhere, then no Nishi exists, no Prerna exists, no Puja exists, no table exists, no chair, nothing exists, only the divine. So then only that is true. So we should only work towards that and escape from the world. So that logic becomes very convincing if one stops at this stage. But the mother says there are stages beyond, which is what Sri Aurobindo refused to stop here and went beyond and discovered the purpose of this creation, that this is not just a launching pad to merge into the divine, but it has its own purpose, independent of that. So all these concepts are there. Anything before we carry on? I don't know, we'll be able to
It's
finish.
awfully confusing, I have to say. I'm just getting completely lost in all this. I have no idea what's going on, honestly. Between egoism, ego, spiritual, psychic, it's just all becoming very mixed up for me because I don't think this is, these are not terms I'm familiar with. It's not used in the way it's normally used. So I'm quite adrift, to be honest.
That's fine. That's fine.
There are these two words. If you, I don't know, correct me if I'm not on the right this thing, that ahem and abhiman. There's a difference. If you don't have a ahem is a Hindi word which explains, I think, then you're not there. And they say give up your individuality. Ego is a helper, ego is a bar. So what do you give up if you don't have? So we have to have an ego, that kind of individuality up to a point, and then you don't need it anymore. And then you give it. So the concept that you explained is that only, na? Up to a point, you need ego to be an individual, to be separate for your progress. And then you don't need to have that ego.
Now the problem becomes even more complex because you see, somewhere Sri Aurobindo has said also that it's very difficult to translate these words into English. The Sanskrit terms do not create confusion. But in English, like when he says ego was the helper, ego is the bar, I suppose it will be in this context, the way this is being read, the way Mother has written here. It would be egoism was the helper, egoism is the bar for us. Then, when this comes from psychic to spiritual, psychic still has the ego, is still in the world created by ego. But for psychic, ego is not a bar. Psychic is not barred by anything except that the tyranny of the mind and the vital and the physical. And that also it chooses because its way of working is to be quietly because it has eternity, it is immortal. So it doesn't have, oh, I have only 40 years to live, so let me achieve this. It has lifetimes. So it kind of gives you the guidance, but if you don't listen to it, it waits. Just like parents wait for their children to learn from their mistakes. So it is something like that. So at the moment, I think let's not complicate matters with other things because many a times in English, Sri Aurobindo uses the same words in different ways. For example, the soul. Sometimes he calls psychic the souls. Then there are letters in which he has explained the difference between psychic and the soul. So let's not go there. Yeah. But for our purpose, basically, do you want to read spiritual education? We can also not read it if you feel this is not relevant for your knowledge.
No, we have to start somewhere, I think. As Sri Aurobindo says, the cells develop. Let's try. And this is my view. I don't know what others have to say.
Mine is I'm happy to skip this. This is all going above my head anyway. So I'm at a much more, fundamental level. So I'm quite happy to stick with, vital and physical and whatever. This is like way beyond, what's going on. I can skip this session. You guys can carry on and then I can join in if you're doing something else later, maybe.
So our plan is to finish this chapter. Although I would say that just sit quietly and do listen. That would be nice. And your questions also help us. And then there is one conversation by the mother on psychic and spiritual education, which we can take up. And that is it. That concludes the series of essays which she wrote on education. So if it is getting too much, we can stop here for today.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm happy to sit around.
Okay. Right. So then, who should I ask? Pooja, have you read? You have read? Prerna has disappeared. Ila,
I can read, even though I can't understand. Okay. So here also in spiritual education, the goal you set before you will assume in the mind's formulation of it different names according to the environment in which you've been brought up, the path you have followed, and the affinities of your temperament. Those who have a religious tendency will call it God, and their spiritual effort will be towards identification with the transcendental God beyond all forms, as opposed to the immanent God dwelling in each form. Others will call it the absolute, the supreme origin, others nirvana, yet others who view the world as an unreal illusion will name it as the only reality. And to those who regard all manifestation as falsehood, it will be the sole truth. And every one of these expressions contains an element of truth, but all are incomplete, expressing only one aspect of that which is. Here too, however, the mental formulation has no great importance. And once you have passed through the intermediate stages, the experience is identical. In any case, the most effective starting point, the swiftest method, is total self giving. Besides, no joy is more perfect than the joy of a total self giving, excuse me, to whatever is the summit of your conception. For some, it is a notion of God, for others, that of perfection. If this self giving is made with persistence and ardor, a moment comes when you pass beyond the concept and arrive at an experience that escapes all description, but which is almost always identical in its effects. And as your self giving becomes more and more perfect and integral, it will be accompanied by the aspiration for identification, a total fusion with that to which you have given yourself. And little by little, this aspiration will overcome all differences and all resistances, especially if with the aspiration there is an intense and spontaneous love, for then nothing can stand in the way of its victorious drive.
so basically, the mother here is saying that even this aim of the spiritual, so psychic is the self discovery of the self in oneself, the true self in oneself. And this is something which is beyond form. So various religions have given various names to it: moksha, nirvana, all these she has described. And also she says it will be affected by whatever. That's why even afterlife experience, people who have near death experience and describe what they saw, depending on in which religion or which culture they are born, they define it in those terms. And yet there are certain common elements. We always find this light and this tunnel, going through the tunnel towards a light. This element seems to be common in what most of the people have said. But they might see Christ standing there at the end of the light, or they might see the mother, or they might see Krishna, or whatever their affinities are. So the mother says that doesn't matter, because there is truth in every experience, but no experience by itself, the way it's being described by the mind, is complete. So the swiftest method to arrive at this experience is total self-giving. Total self-giving. These words we will not go into. They have They have layers and layers of meaning. And then she talks about the joy of a total self giving to whatever is the summit. So here she brings us back to okay, you're not there as yet, but whatever you decide, whatever is the summit of your conception, whoever you want to give yourself to, even if it is a fake guru who you consider to be your guru. Somewhere Sri Aurobindo and Mother have said, somebody asked this question that, there are so many charlatans and people very sincerely give themselves to them, then what happens? So they've said that because the disciple is sincere, they will still give. The person who's a charlatan will not, but because the sincerity will have its own result, because the self-giving is sincere, it will have its own result. So total self-giving to whatever is one's conception. And then she also calls it could be God, it could be perfection. So it doesn't have to be termed in, or it could be truth, like for a scientist. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be called in necessarily religious, spiritual terms. And then same way, like in the psychic, she said a door opens and all that. So here again, she's saying if the self-giving is made with persistence and ardor, a moment comes when you pass beyond whatever your concept is and you arrive at an experience that escapes all description. But it is almost always identical in its effects. The effect it has on you, whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist or an atheist or whatever you are, in its effect, it is almost identical. And as you grow in, the self-giving becomes more perfect and integral, meaning self-giving of the mind, of the vital, of the physical. It will be accompanied by the aspiration for total fusion, like Meera, to that which you have given yourself. And little by little, this aspiration will overcome all differences, all resistances, especially if there is an intense and spontaneous love. I suppose that's why Meera is such an ideal figure, because she combines this aspiration, self-giving, and love in her character. For then nothing can stand in the way of its victorious. So this is that merging into the divine. The point of difference comes, continuing with our earlier conversation, to tie it up for those who are who have a little bit of understanding of these concepts, that in earlier yogas, it was that you merge into the formless and that's it. The samadhi state, the shunya, whatever it is called. But in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, in the integral yoga, this is, Sri Aurobindo says, is an intermediary step. It's not that it's not important. It is an intermediary step. So psychic realization, then the spiritual realization, and after that comes the supramental realization. So after that, the descent, not to stay there, but to, with that consciousness, to work upon earth. And that is what in later forms of Buddhism has been integrated also, where it says that Buddha refused to transit finally into nirvana and said, till every person achieves it, I will not cross over. And in some ways it is referred to in Bible, in the last chapter, I think, kingdom of God upon earth. What does it mean, kingdom of God upon earth? It is manifesting the divine upon earth, not just merging into the divine. We won't be able to finish it today. Do you want to read more, or shall we take up the last few paras next time?
Let's take them up next time, Didi.
So, any questions? Any? अरे सागरिका भी है यहाँ पे. Okay. Hello, Prerna. Anything to discuss? We have 5 minutes.
आपने you've really clarified, ये इसमें बहुत clarity आ गई. First you said it has to be psychic, and then you said that
Sri Aurobindo
How?
Sri Aurobindo, but you have repeated it for us and summed it up very well. Those 4 stages: psychic, spiritual, you said, then supramental, and then that, and then coming back, the kingdom of God. That's so beautifully put, as I have understood.
I didn't say spiritual. Sorry, let me rephrase it. Sri Aurobindo has talked of 3 realizations: psychic realization, spiritual realization, and supramental realization. When coming back upon earth, I was speaking in the context of spiritual. That without the supramental, without Sri Aurobindo discovering the supermind, this return would not have been possible. Because Sri Aurobindo says that if I had not come upon that, I would have also agreed that this world is an illusion and spirit only is the truth. But for whatever reason, he was pushed to go beyond and not accept the spiritual realization as the final one. And the hints to this path beyond are in the Veda. The Vedic texts contain the hints that there is something beyond. And Sri Aurobindo pursued it and then discovered the supramental consciousness, which is a non dual consciousness. Why is supramental important? Because there the division does not exist. Only the divine exists, but it is not formless in the sense. That's why the mother says even beyond. And she will end this chapter with hinting at that even there is supramental education, and even beyond that there is. Supramental is not the final word. So, but for the evolution now, it is. Because all the other levels have been manifested. That level has to be. So that's what makes it possible for the divine, the kingdom of God upon earth becomes possible only with the supramental. But it is also said that we have to just focus right now, like Ila is saying, on the mind, vital, physical, and the psychic. Because without the psychic, just developing the mind, body, and vital does not serve a greater purpose. It does not make you master of life. Yes, your responses do become better as we see, in our own natures from 10 years ago or 20 years ago to now, since coming on the path, let's say. Things have changed, our responses to circumstances, definitely. But if we want to continue, psychic realization at least is important. After that, let's see.
Didi, so do the scriptures differentiate between psychic and spiritual realization?
That Sri Aurobindo says, mother brought this into his yoga. This, otherwise, Sri Aurobindo also was going through the mind, like in the old yogas. It's through the mind, and then you go into samadhi. It is the mother who brought this. There might be verses in the Vedas which talk of for this. They talk about the soul. They definitely Upanishads and all talk about the soul, the presence of the soul. That is talked about, but I'm not sure. I don't think this distinction is made between the soul and the Jivatman. And the pathway is, and it is not used for yogic practices. Its liberation is aimed at, its liberation from material life, from earthly life, liberation from the cycle of birth and death. That is what is aimed at, that the soul drops the necessity of taking rebirth. That is the aim, liberation. And it doesn't need to come back. But that it can be an active agent in the yoga, that has not been explored as far as I know. And that is what the mother contributed to Sri Aurobindo's yoga. And that's why it's called the sunlit path. Because it is actually the divine, through the psychic, The divine does the yoga for you, and you only have to surrender. Okay. Deep waters. I've also generally kept spiritual education aside. I always talk of food. But I must say, this time, reading it together with all of you and going into detail like this, step by step, this much detail, I've never discussed these chapters before. I've read them many times, discussed them, but not in such detail. And also, simultaneously, because I'm doing Life Divine, I'm doing essays on the Gita, I'm studying the shlokas of the Gita in another course. So I think all that is helping also. So, and Savitri, of course. So it is making much more sense to me also, the spiritual, and seeming that, okay, one can maybe bring it into education somehow. Otherwise, I've always said, leave it out, leave it out. I don't know why mother has written about spiritual education. How can we do it in schools? I don't understand it. So, Ila, this is after, I don't know, almost 30 years, 40 years, almost 40 years of being in the field, I'm saying this.
I
So,
have to wait for another lifetime. That's basically it. It's not happening in this lifetime, I can assure you.
okay. Okay, see you next time. Bye.
Um,
Right. We were towards the end of this chapter, in the middle of the spiritual education. I think let's start from here. Even if we are reading a couple of paras again, I think let's start from here so that okay, Prerna is here also. So last time we had discussed about the difference between the psychic and the spiritual consciousness. Psychic is immortal life, unbroken continuity in the universe of forms. So it is manifested on earth. It is part of the evolution. It evolves from life to life. Spiritual, on the other hand, lives in the infinite and eternal, beyond all creation, beyond time and space. So this is the essential difference. It does not evolve. It is not bound by time and space. And to become conscious of the psychic, you have to abolish all egoism. But to live a spiritual life, you must no longer have an ego. And spiritual here is a technical term because we use it very loosely also. Anything, any aspiration for a deeper life, we say spiritual. But here it is being used with reference to the spiritual center and that consciousness, one realizing that or coming in touch with that. And yes, Sagarika, you are on mute.
It's limitless space. What does it mean? Psychic life is limitless space means?
Because psychic is not only for this life or this form. It's not bound by the physical or
Acha, okay.
city or my country or anything.
Okay. Limitless space. Okay.
Ever progressive change. And yet
Hmm.
it is not static. Whereas the spiritual consciousness is static.
Okay.
I was looking and in our many selves, there is a passage where Sri Aurobindo explains the difference between all these terms very nicely. If let's finish the chapter, and if you are interested, we can read that passage. And the mother goes on to say that you can, if you want to apply spiritual education, the goal will be something which is, you can call it God, divine, perfection, truth, etc., etc. Experience is the same. People call it by different things depending on their propensity, their culture, their religious beliefs, or theism, atheist, Gnostic, agnostic, whatever. Mental formulation, no great importance. Starting point, swiftest method is total self-giving. And then a moment comes when you pass beyond the concept, arrive at an experience. And as the self-giving giving becomes more perfect and integral, it will be accompanied by the aspiration for identification, total fusion. So this we had discussed last time, that is why people go into samadhi or merge into the formless, etc., because the experience itself is very beautiful and powerful. But in the yoga of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, that is a middle point or something. It's on the way. It's not the final thing. So let's start reading from here. Sagarika, why don't you start? Read this para only.
There is an essential difference between this identification and the identification with the psychic being. The latter can be made more and more lasting, and in certain cases, it becomes permanent and never leaves the person who has realized it, whatever his outer activities may be. In other words, the identification is no longer realized only in meditation and concentration, but its effects are felt at every moment of one's life, in sleep as well as in waking.
That's clear. That's about the psychic.
Mm.
One identifies with the psychic, and as that identification becomes more and more settled, then this is what happens. Any questions, or shall we go on? Okay, Prerna, you take up this next passage.
On the other hand, liberation from all form and the identification with that which is beyond form cannot last in an absolute manner, for it would be automatically bring about the dissolution of the material form. Certain tradition says that this dissolution happens inevitable within the 20 days of total identification. Yet, it is not necessarily so. Even if the experience is only momentary, it produces in the consciousness result that are never all oblit- ob- obliterated and have repercussions on all states of the being, both internal and external. Moreover, once the identification has been realized, it can be renewed at will, provided that you know how to put yourself in the same conditions.
It's very clear. Mother is explaining this for the teachers. It does not mean you have to start doing it with the children. And obviously, one cannot do it also, because then one is only using the mind. There is nothing. So that one has to remember all the time while reading this chapter, Psychic and Spiritual Education, that this is whatever mother is saying, it is for us, for adults, to first start engaging with it, experience it, and then whatever happens through that, that will come in its own way for each person. So very clearly she has explained the difference between the psychic identification and identification with the spirit. So what is the first difference? What is the first difference that she talked about?
I think of form and I think form and non-form that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because psychic is part of the evolution, there to support the evolution of the individual in this life and in future lives, etc. It once one realizes the psychic, one doesn't go out of manifestation. One continues the activities. It is not that one sits down and just meditates. One continues working, doing whatever, but from a different poise, from the poise of the psychic consciousness rather than from the mind, vital, physical consciousness. And the effects are felt at every moment, even in sleep, in waking, but also in sleep, the effects are felt. So it is a very kind of a chemical change that takes place. However, spiritual, because the center itself is not bound by the physical form, it is above it and it is free of it. It is limitless, infinite, without, beyond time and space. Once one identifies with it, it would automatically bring about the dissolution of the material form, what we will call death or samadhi, maran samadhi leli. You know, it won't be possible for the person to continue with the activities, with the emotions, with the thoughts, with the life of the body, life upon earth. Once one identifies with the spiritual, then this is an aside which the mother says that there are views about it that maximum you can last for 20 days. After that, all activity will stop. But mother says it's not necessarily so. And the experience, even if it is momentary, suppose in a particular meditation or through divine's grace or whatever, you suddenly have the experience of identifying with the spirit, your spiritual being. It will produce results in your consciousness which can never be wiped off, obliterated, and will have repercussions, consequences, impact on all states of the being, both internal and external. And then she says, of course, you cannot stay there, you cannot stay up there. But once you have realized that, once you have had experience of it, you have tasted it, you have touched it, you can renew it at will. So I finish all my day's work, and then in the evening I sit down and I again kind of, it's like revisiting my favorite place, you know. So I just recharge myself by going there or renewing that experience. I cannot stay there, but it is something that I can revisit if I know how to put myself in the same conditions, which means a mastery, which means that I have, like Sri Aurobindo and Savitri describes, step by step, that's mastery. It's not that suddenly you had one experience, but you cannot do it again at will. It just happened one day, but you cannot repeat it. Clear? Any questions? Okay, Kirti, you want to?
I'll read. And another thing, what you're saying is, if you put yourself in the same conditions, comes to the same thing when she says, be conscious, be conscious. If we are conscious, we know the condition that led us to that kind of state, isn't it?
I would say there is of course, to be conscious is the foundation. But suppose I'm meditating and through the grace of the divine, I suddenly have an experience. I have not discovered that path myself. It's been gifted to me, that experience has been gifted, but I don't know how next day, if that opening is not there, or the grace for whatever reason does not give me that experience again, do I know the steps how to recreate it for myself? So, like when we learn how to reason, how to concentrate, how to observe, there are specific steps to it. We can be conscious, yes, but there is also a method to it. That first I have to do this, and for each there is a slight difference. Somebody concentrates better in a quiet surrounding, somebody can concentrate even in a noisy metro, whatever, or in a discotheque. It depends person to person how they have developed. And everybody has a particular method. They follow the steps. Same way, when you memorize things, you follow certain methods, and everybody's method can be a little different. Same way, this is similar. All spiritual experiences, if one has to have a mastery, then one has to have one's method. And that's why discipline, sadhana, discipline comes in. It's not just meditating and just eating the fruit and then coming away and not knowing how to again build upon that, how to now work on the next step, on the next step. Even Sri Aurobindo kept a whole record of his yoga and noted down like a scientist all the steps. And very systematically, then the next day he would take a step further, then next day. So it is a very scientific process. So that is what I believe she's saying. That you can renew it by putting yourself in the same conditions, means not just outwardly you put yourself, okay, I sat on this cushion facing this side, not all that. That may help, but it is the inner work that if you have done it consciously, then.
Yeah, good. Because sometimes we use be conscious as a very blanket term. But now this is so beautiful. Even in being conscious, there's a certain discipline which we have to follow.
We want towards self-mastery. See, in science, that to know oneself and to master oneself. To know oneself, one has to be conscious. So that's the first step. But then mastery does not come just by being conscious.
Very nice. Thank you. Now I have to read from The Merging.
I also didn't know this. You asked the question, that's why.
I think this is what study groups are all about. Even we didn't know. I also didn't realize. Suddenly it occurred to me. I mean, I'm repeating that it was a very blanket term. But then for the mastery, it's a different manner, it's extended path. And to be conscious, otherwise it's a, so that difference is there. And if we are conscious of that difference, then we will work towards that mastery thing also, no? The steps that are required to master oneself. To know oneself, as you said, is being conscious. Okay, fine. Now, how do I master that knowing oneself and improve on that? Pragati, क्या बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में प्रगति को? Progress on that.
Okay, start. Yeah, read this paragraph, please.
This merging into the formless is the supreme liberation sought by those who want to escape from an existence which no longer holds any attraction for them. It is not surprising that they are dissatisfied with the world in its present form, but a liberation that leaves the world as it is and in no way affects the conditions of life from which others suffer, cannot satisfy those who refuse to enjoy a boon which they are the only ones. Enjoy a boon which they are the only ones, or almost the only ones, to possess. Those who dream of a world more worthy of splendors that lie hidden behind its appearance, disorder, and widespread misery. They dream of sharing with others the wonders they have discovered in their inner exploration, and the means to do so is within their reach. now that they have arrived at the summit of the ascent. Should I go on?
No. So for all those who say, because this is one of the common misunderstandings, that integral yoga is a very individualistic yoga. Most people think, and in a way, yes, because the change begins with you, that you are at the center of change. So each individual has to work on themselves rather than doing social work and trying to change others. In that sense, it is individualistic, but not in its ultimate aims, because, like Mother says, in fact, in that sense, the earlier yogas are individualistic because it is one's own liberation, one's own moksha, one's own nirvana. So here, Mother is saying, and this was Sri Aurobindo's starting point also, that how can my personal liberation help the humanity on the whole? So many avatars have come and gone, but the condition of human life remains the same. So what is that method through which the condition of entire humanity can change? That was his quest. So that's what the Mother is saying. And once you have this liberation, she says, the means to do so, to share these wonders with others. This is what Ashwapati's journey in Savitri is. He has the darshan of the Divine Mother. He is given the choice, and later Savitri also in her battle with death, of just merging and staying there. But both of them take the choice of going back, because so that the humanity can gain from it. So the means to do so is within their reach now that they have arrived at the summit of their ascent. Clear? Okay. Pooja, please take up the next paragraph.
From beyond the frontiers of form, a new force can be evoked, a power of consciousness, which is as yet unexpressed and which, by its emergence, will be able to change the course of things and give birth to a new world. For the true solution to the problem of suffering, ignorance, and death is not an individual escape from earthly miseries by self annihilation into the unmanifest, nor a problematical collective flight from universal suffering by an integral and final return of the creation to its creator, thus curing the universe by abolishing it, but a transformation, a total transfiguration of matter brought about by the logical continuation of nature's ascending march in her progress towards perfection, by the creation of a new species that will be to man what man is to the animal, and that will manifest upon earth a new force, a new consciousness, and a new power. And so will begin a new education, which can be called the supramental education. It will, by its all powerful action, work not only upon the consciousness of individual beings, but upon the very substance of which they are built and upon the environment in which they live.
So see how it's a logical progression. I mean, now it seems very logical and clear to us, from psychic, which is bound by form in a way, I'm using the wrong words, which is manifested in the form and is supporting the evolution of the form in this life, then next form in next life, to the spiritual consciousness, which is free of time and space. So at this point, the mother stopped talking of spiritual education. Now she's going to a third level, which is not there in the title, but she reveals it here, the supramental education. That only once one has realized the spiritual consciousness, then beyond the frontiers of form, new force can be evoked. This is the supramental force. Power of consciousness, yet as yet unexpressed. And what will it do? By its emergence, will be able to change the course of things and give birth to a new world. Why does she say new world? Because when mind manifested, we don't say it's a new world. Why is this being called a new world? For the true solution to the problem of suffering, ignorance, and death. And this is what we are reading in Savitri, the problem of pain. And Narad is going to speak on similar lines. True solution to the problem of suffering, ignorance, and death is not an individual escape. So one is to escape individually, moksha, nirvana, all that kind of a thing, samadhi, or a collective flight from universal suffering by abolishing the world. That this world is beyond redemption. Let us all collectively merge into the divine, curing the universe by abolishing it. So neither liberation, individual or collective, is required, but a transformation, total transfiguration of matter, not just life, of matter, total transfiguration of matter brought about by the logical continuation of nature's ascending march towards perfection, creation of a new species. So here she is saying that it will be birth of a new world. It's a new force, a consciousness yet unexpressed, and it will solve the problem of suffering, ignorance, death. That's why. Because even if from physical to vital to mental, higher mind, overmind, all those levels, death still remains, suffering still remains. Only at the level of the supermind, because it is a unitary consciousness, the duality is, no duality exists there. That's why there can only be one. There can only be light without darkness, without shadow, good without evil. So all dualities are abolished. That's why it's a new world. And that transformation, it's a total transfiguration, not just of life, of mind, but of matter. Because matter will not dissolve, will not be perishable, will not self-destruct. And this, she says, is the logical continuation. This is what is the purpose of evolution. Nature evolving is this ascending march, and it is her progress towards perfection by the creation of a new species. And what will be this new species like? It is as drastic a change as human being was to the animal. It is that kind of a leap. And this new species will be able to manifest upon earth a new force, a new consciousness, and a new power. So from animal world to human world to supramental world. And so will begin a new education, which can be called. So this is in the future. This is just she's explaining to us, but except in your aspiration and in your prayers, at least I don't know. It will be by its all-powerful action work not only upon the consciousness of individual beings, but upon the very substance of which they are built, matter, and upon the environment in which they live. Matter, life, mind, and upon the environment in which they live. Anything to say, share, ask?
I suddenly feel after reading this paragraph, like things like AI, machine learning, and are they are not evolving, because ultimately the faculties of the mind, vital, even when you are saying it will be a new environment, it will be a new space. So I think it is all a part of a progress. We are, because they're coming with a uh, new environment and new things. Of course, our faculties also change, and that brings change in the education, and we are somewhere, I feel, evolving in all this process.
Yeah, of course, evolution is continuing, and all technological changes are progress. Of course, the problem is that as long as human consciousness does not change in its very proclivities, in its tendencies, the use we make of that technology and the intention behind developing that technology, the purpose for which it is made, those are questionable. And those often lead not only to progress, they also lead to regression or destruction and things. But I mean, it is like you see, the world from a plane, then you go and see it from the moon, and then you see it from somewhere else. So your perspective also keeps changing. And uh, in the larger thing, everything the divine uses for evolution. But that that being said, when we say it just from the mind, it becomes dangerous because it can lead us to be passive, inactive. Everything the divine is going to use, so I can be as nasty as I want. The divine will use it for something good, something. So, so these there are many many levels, and it's very entangled. And if you are interested, then I would recommend that you read what Sri Aurobindo and Mother have directly written about the supramental world and the supramental consciousness. My understanding is, this is my understanding. I might be totally wrong in it, but that's how I have interpreted it. That while it is good to know that there is this supramental consciousness, and on 29 February, the golden day, 1956, the mother, first Sri Aurobindo brought it down upon in his body when he gave up his body. And then in 1956, the mother brought it down upon earth, and it's working in the earth atmosphere. As a person trying to walk the path, it helps me to know these things, to have a certain context and this thing. But also, I understand that to work towards it, uh, the first step is working towards the psychic consciousness. And before that, also, or simultaneously, to work on the mind, the vital, the physical. That much only is my curriculum in this life, I think. And as far as the supramental is concerned, what I have understood, it is Sri Aurobindo and Mother are working on it. So it is not that I have to work on it in any way. I have to only make the base ready. And that also with the divine grace, of course, but to whatever extent is in my hands. So that is how I interpret it, and for myself, that's my understanding.
Totally agree, because like a nursery student should focus on what is taught in nursery class, and then slowly one reach to another level. So yes.
Also good to know the whole pic. Well, this is also just Robin and Mother keep saying there are still beyond, but they haven't revealed, because
Ah.
perhaps too much. And also, it's beyond the mind, even supramental beyond the mind.
Yeah. So whenever you are asking, it is clear. So my answer is clear. I don't know, but I'm trying to
I
absorb it.
know the moment we say supramental, supermind,
Yeah, other also, it's more of just
people,
understand, right? Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't use another term.
Mm.
Saying like vital is different, like Physical is different, mental is different, psychic is different. Why supermind? Anybody else wants to say something, share their understanding?
See, mind, why I don't know if it connects to the thing we are talking. How I understand is mind, vital, and the physical have to have a. Matlab, if one has to progress, the other two have to support. If physical wants to progress, it cannot progress without the help of the mind and the emotion, vital. है ना? Then we bring in psychic, which will further refine it. And I think in the supramental, there won't be this duality and this multi thing that each one is working separately. I don't know if I'm making sense. The progress or the development will be of the whole being. There won't be a separate for physical, separate for vital, where it has to be supported by the other one. Do I make sense?
Makes sense. We have to read, we have to go back to the words. But yeah, it may also make sense because, like last time we were talking, like Mother said, for psychic, egoism has to be abolished. But still, it is in the world of ego only, ego created world that psychic operates. Whereas the new species, there is, and even at spiritual level, she's saying ego has to be abolished. So supramental, obviously, that is not. Ego is the principle of division, and in supramental, there is no division. So it might be what you are saying. I have no idea, but it might be what you are saying. Nishi, are you with us now? Hi.
Yes, Didi, I am.
Read the next paragraph. Will you be able to? This one, in contrast.
Yes. Yes. In contrast with the types of education we have mentioned previously, which progress from below upwards by an ascending movement of the various parts of the being, the supramental education will progress from above downwards, its influence spreading from one state of being to another until at last the physical is reached. This last transformation will only occur visibly when the inner states of being have already been considered transformed. It is therefore quite unreasonable to try to recognize the presence of the supramental by physical appearances. For these will be the last to change, and the supramental force can be at work in an individual long before anything of it becomes perceptible in his bodily life.
Clear?
Let's finish it.
No, just let's. So physical, vital, mental, psychic education, it is a progression from below upwards or from outside inwards, whichever way you want to look at it. But supramental is, because in between there are many other levels which Mother has not spoken about, between the spiritual and yeah, right up to the spiritual also. But supramental, she's saying, is from above downwards. It's like that tree, not the upside down tree.
15th chapter Gita.
Which has its roots in heaven. And
yeah.
So spreading from one state to the last. And this is also like the Gita, na? When Arjun asks that how will that person walk, how will he talk?
Yes.
So Mother is saying you will not get to know. And like Sri Aurobindo says in Savitri, wise men will talk and sleep and not know the coming of the hour. And the God, what is it? God shall.
While the wise men sleep and talk. Oh, voila.
God shall something. While and the work will be done. Something, I'm forgetting the exact line. It's a very beautiful line. Okay, so and this force, since 29 Feb 1956, is fixed in the earth consciousness at a larger level and is working since 56. Yes, Nishi, you want to read the last one?
To sum up, one can say that the supramental education will result no longer in a progressive formation of human nature and an increasing development of its latent faculties, but in a transformation of the nature itself, a transfiguration of the being in its entirety, a new ascent of species above and beyond man towards Superman, leading in the end to the appearance of a divine race upon earth.
It's something like what Kirti was saying. She says there will no longer be a progressive formation of human nature or refining of faculties. All that has to have happened earlier only in this world of division. Because this will be a process of transformation, transfiguration of the being in its entirety, new ascent of the species above and beyond man towards Superman, leading in the end to appearance of a divine race upon earth. So one can say then why should we bother about working on the physical, vital, mental? Let's just wait for the supramental to transform us. Huh? What is the argument against that? So I'm being the devil's advocate and I'm saying, okay, then I don't want to educate myself. I don't want to work on all these things. Why should I?
See, very simply, if we see the evolution process, I'm putting it very, very simply. The monkeys who didn't have the aspiration, like when we see the evolution, an earlier species like fish had the aspiration to be a frog, a species which can be on earth as well as water, and so on and so forth, with which each progression. So the species who do not aspire to progress will remain what they are, and the supramental manifestation will come to the people who are aspiring. It's a very simplistic answer, but that makes sense to me. The aspiration has to be there. The monkeys did not vanish, they are still there. So the humans of our level, of what we are today, will be there, and the people who aspire will go on to become supramentalized.
If aspiration is the only thing, then the monkey who aspired, he didn't have to work on his mind and vital and body. Why do we have to work? I can aspire, I do aspire. Why do I have to go through physical education and vital education and mental education and psychic and this, that, and the other? I will just aspire.
Is it that mother gave me the choice by giving me the Vivek? I don't know. We are just discussing.
Yeah, of course, we're discussing.
You might as well use the Vivek the buddhi that I have given you.
I believe that if I work on my physical, mental, vital, then I'm making myself a vessel for that manifestation by transforming myself, becoming ready for it, not just aspiring, but also working and making the instrument perfect for the manifestation.
Yeah, I agree with you. Of course, aspiration is very, very important. But if you read the book The Mother, Sri Aurobindo says, starts with there are two powers that alone can change in their conjunction, yeah, or achieve the difficult endeavor. Aspiration from below and grace from above. But then he goes on to say that only aspiration is not enough. Personal effort is needed. And even when he talks of surrender, he says, and do not imagine that the divine will do even the surrender for you. You still have to make the personal effort. And it is like if we were taking the analogy of curriculum, if I don't finish the curriculum, what has been given to me, I cannot expect suddenly to do PhD without finishing anything. And just because I have an aspiration or I have a dream. So what we began with Science of Living, that if you have an aim, to achieve the aim, you have to work on yourself. Because the aim is to be achieved through the faculties which have been given to you. And unless you do that, like Pooja is saying, that Aadhaar, that foundation, that base will not be there, which can hold when the supramental force comes and touches, I will be shattered. I will not be able to hold it in any way. So, a lot of people may aspire, but along with aspiration, this work of rejection, surrender, the personal effort. Rejection and surrender require personal effort. So that has to be done. Even aspiration to keep it alive requires personal effort. So,
I also thought, Didi, as we read the various aspects, that it went from in lines with the principle from, from more concrete to abstract. And when we started with physical, so also preparing for the most aspect. I mean, I know that how much struggle I've had understanding the later aspects. So I think starting from simple to complex or from physical to abstract is the way I interpreted that, why do we need to go in this order? And I think even when we were reading mental education, Mother has very purposefully given things in steps and in an order. I think that lays out the work in that order.
yeah. Yeah.
For me, I've no, matlab, I more than an aspiration to be more every day working on all these fields is helping me in with my own peace and harmony. That is enough for me to, matlab, coming for a study circle, somewhere something is feeling very happy, very why matlab, nobody has forced me to come here, but I'm gaining and I'm feeling happy coming here. So that is enough for me to work on all these things. Happy is maybe not the correct word, but contentment, peace, harmony is there's a light within me that is getting the fuel by coming to study circle, by doing all this for my different beings. That's my only reason.
Yes. It is the power of Sri Aurobindo and Mother's words. And of course, a study circle makes it possible to be more disciplined and to engage with it by yourself, other things away from it. And then the discussion, only an intellectual discussion, but is arising out of an experience, something one has felt, then it acquires a depth and helps everybody in the group. Right. So we have two pathways to explore. One is that passage I said, if you're interested. And the other is there are two talks which we will take up next time on psychic education, which the mother has said. We have 10 minutes. Do you want to quickly go over that passage?
Yeah, the one you said from our many selves.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's read that.
So this is from Letters on Yoga. Letters on Yoga, Sri Aurobindo has written in response to letters he used to receive every day, and he used to, through the night, write responses to each and every letter received from the disciples. So this is the thing. The Jivatman, spark soul and psychic being. Jivatman, spark soul and psychic being are three different forms of the same reality, and they must not be mixed up together, as that confuses the clearness of the inner experience. So, like I said, many times Sri Aurobindo uses the words interchangeably, but when he's guiding somebody who is in a scientific way doing the yoga, then to know the difference becomes very important. So he's pointing out the difference between these three terms: Jivatman, spark soul, and psychic being. The Jivatman or spirit, as it is usually called in English, is self-existent above the manifested or instrumental being, which means my body, life, mind. So it is above, it is above. It is superior to birth and death, always the same, does not evolve, the individual self or Atman. So each individual has it. So he's calling it Atman also, he's calling it Jivatman also. In English, known as spirit. It is the eternal true being of the individual. Eternal true being. The soul is a spark of the divine, which is not seated above the manifested being, so it is in manifestation, but comes down into the manifestation to support its evolution in the material world, to support its evolution of the manifested being, of the human being, of the individual, not just human being, you will see. It is at first an undifferentiated power of the divine consciousness, undifferentiated. It doesn't have a identity separate, defined, containing all possibilities, but at first unevolved possibilities. It contains the possibilities, but they are not manifested or evolved, which have not yet taken form, but to which it is the function of evolution to give form. As the creation evolves, these possibilities will start manifesting. This spark is there in all living beings, from the lowest to the highest. So the butterfly has it, the cat has it, the monkey has it, I have it, plant has it, all living beings. So the soul, the spark soul, is present in everything, every animate, anything which is living, not just humans. Then the third term, the psychic being. The psychic being is formed by the soul in its evolution. Of course, the question comes, what is the soul then? Well, he hasn't, I don't know if he speaks of it, but so, okay, the soul is this, the spark soul. Soul is a spark of the divine, and that spark forms the psychic being. It supports the mind, vital, body, grows by their experiences, carries the nature from life to life. So normally what we call soul, it is the psychic or Chaitya Purush. At first it is veiled by the mind, vital, and body. Who's veiled? The psychic being. But as it grows, it becomes capable of coming forward and dominating the mind, life, and body. In the ordinary man, it depends on them for expression and is not able to take them up and freely use them. So in ordinary people, the psychic being depends on the mind, vital, and body to express itself. But it doesn't have the freedom to use them as it wants, because the mind, body, and physical, vital, and mental consciousness dominate it, and they veil it, they hide it from our consciousness. The life of the being is animal or human and not divine. So we either live as animals with animalistic tendencies or with human, but not divine. When the psychic being can, by sadhana, here is that personal effort, by sadhana become dominant and freely use its instruments, then the impulse towards the divine becomes complete, and the transformation of mind, vital, and body, not merely their liberation, becomes possible. So that's why this sadhana is essential to move towards or make us ready for the supramental. The self or Atman self or Atman, that's the Jivatman, right? Which is unmanifested. Being free and superior to birth and death, the experience of the Jivatman and its unity with the supreme or universal self, the cosmic divine, the universal divine, brings the sense of liberation. So if you realize this chakra and you experience, not think, experience that identity with all universe, it brings a sense of liberation, mukti. But for the transformation of the life and nature, the awakening of the psychic being is indispensable. So, although spiritual in that sense, if we look at hierarchy, first psychic, then spiritual. So, spiritual is higher. Psychic puts you in touch with the individual divine. Spiritual puts you in touch with the universal divine. So, in that sense, it is higher. And that's why traditional yogas did not give importance to this psychic realization, because their purpose was mukti, to merge into this universal divine. So it was all passage through the mind. There was nothing going deep inside the heart, which is what the mother brought. That the individual divine, to realize that, and then the grace can act more powerfully in the being, because the psychic is then a conscious, active collaborator, and it can transform the mind, the body, the life. So that's what Sri Aurobindo says. For liberation, one doesn't need to go towards psychic. It's not required. Those whose aim is liberation, they need not do psychic education or psychic tapasya or become aware of the psychic at all. But if the aim is transformation, then awakening of the psychic is indispensable. The psychic being realizes its oneness with the true being. So then when one realizes the psychic, and pointing to the heart, you can't see the psychic, okay? So then there is this connection which takes place, pathway kind of forms. Because psychic being realizes its oneness, because it's a projection of that into the evolution. But it does not change into it. It says, no, I will work from here only. I'm not going to go here. I'm your emissary in evolution in this body. I'm going to work from here only. I think that much is enough.
I think it has been done so beautifully. This difference between the universal and which is the what? Spiritual education and the psychic, the difference is now getting a bit clearer. Spiritual, if I may just repeat for my understanding, spiritual is for mukti, basically when you go through the mind, which the earlier method is doing. And psychic, as as Sri Aurobindo says, is through, and mother say, is through this part, that opening is happening. Then you're not going towards only mukti, but you're coming back and being into this creation.
You cannot forego spiritual after the.
No, you cannot.
But yes, to be able to transform or not merge into the divine, the formless, and give up this earthly life, then the psychic thing is necessary.
Thank you for this. This was really very, very beautiful. Now the thread is in the hand. We have to climb.
There are Letters on Yoga has a whole section, and then Are Many Cells, and this book by Dr. A.S. Dalal.
Yeah, see, one goes through these books. We have all these, but sometimes you need some pointers to make it more sense.
Okay, so next time we will take up Mother's Talk. Yeah. Okay, see you then. Bye. Thank you.